Marcus Hale stood frozen in the doorway of the reunion hall, watching his ex-wife laugh with a group of former classmates. The same laugh she'd once used to tell him he'd never amount to anything. Across the room, Elena Cross held court like royalty, her success worn like armor, while Marcus clutched an old name tag with trembling fingers. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the failed tech worker she'd divorced 7 years ago now held the keys to a project worth $500 million. But Marcus wasn't here to gloat. He was here because his daughter had asked him one simple question that morning. "Dad, were you always this afraid?" Tonight, everything would change. But first, he had to survive the next 5 minutes without turning around and walking out. Before we dive into Marcus's story, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're curious how a single night can rewrite someone's entire life, hit that like button and stick around until the end. Trust me, you won't see this coming. The fluorescent lights of Marcus Hale's apartment flickered at 6:47 a.m., the same way they had every morning for the past 3 years. He stood at the kitchen counter in boxers and an old Stanford t-shirt, pouring cereal into 2 bowls, one significantly smaller than the other. The milk carton sputtered its last drops into his daughter's bowl, and Marcus made a mental note to stop at the store on the way home from work. Again. "Dad, you're doing that thing." Marcus looked up. His daughter Lily sat at the small dining table they'd bought secondhand on Craigslist, her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, her eyes, so much like her mother's it sometimes hurt to look at them directly, fixed on him with that particular brand of 9-year-old skepticism. "What thing?" "The spacing out thing, where you stare at stuff but you're not actually seeing it." She spooned cereal into her mouth. "You've been weird all week." Marcus brought the bowls over and sat down across from her. "I'm not weird." "You reorganized the spice cabinet twice. You only do that when you're stressed." "Maybe I just like alphabetized spices." "Nobody likes alphabetized spices, Dad. That's psychopath behavior." She grinned at him, milk threatening to spill from the corner of her mouth. "Is it the reunion thing?" Marcus had made the mistake of leaving the invitation on the counter 3 days ago. Lily had found it before he could throw it away, and her immediate enthusiasm had backed him into a corner he couldn't escape without disappointing her. "It's just a thing," he said, deflecting. "Bunch of people I haven't seen in 15 years standing around eating bad appetizers and lying about their lives." "So why go?" "Because you told me I should." Lily set down her spoon with exaggerated ceremony. "I said it might be good for you to see people. You know, humans, the species you're technically part of." "I see people every day." "Work people don't count. They're paid to tolerate you." Marcus tried not to smile and failed. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You're just noticing now because I'm using it against you." She tilted her head, studying him the way she did when she was working through a complicated math problem. "You're scared you'll see her." The cereal turned to paste in Marcus's mouth. He swallowed carefully. "I'm not scared." "Dad." "Lily." She sighed, a sound far too world-weary for someone who still watched cartoons on Saturday mornings. "You know the thing you always tell me about standing up to Madison Pritchett?" Marcus knew the thing. Madison Pritchett was the terror of Lily's 4th grade class, a pint-sized tyrant who'd made it her mission to make Lily's life miserable for reasons neither of them fully understood. Marcus had spent months coaching Lily through strategies for dealing with bullies, kindness, boundaries, confidence, all the things he'd never managed to apply to his own life. "What about it?" he asked. "You tell me that running away just makes them stronger in your head, that the only way to make them normal-sized again is to actually look at them." She pushed her bowl away and fixed him with a look that was somehow both childish and ancient. "Maybe you need to see Mom again. Make her normal-sized." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Lily almost never called Elena Mom. It was usually your ex-wife, or Elena, or when she was particularly annoyed about something, that woman who sends birthday cards 2 weeks late. "This is different, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because Elena didn't just bully me," Marcus thought. "She rewrote the story of who I was until I believed it myself." "It just is," he said instead. Lily looked at him for a long moment, then stood and carried her bowl to the sink. She rinsed it carefully, a habit he'd drilled into her during their early days of single-parent survival, and turned back to face him. Were you always this afraid? The question hit him like a punch. What? Before everything happened, before the divorce and moving here and all of it, were you always scared of stuff, or did something make you that way? Marcus opened his mouth and found he had no answer. The truth was complicated and ugly, and not something he wanted to explain to his 9-year-old daughter over breakfast cereal. The truth was that he'd been scared for so long he couldn't remember what the alternative felt like. I should get you to school, he said finally. Lily didn't push it. She grabbed her backpack from its hook by the door and waited while Marcus threw on jeans and a button-down that was clean enough. They took the stairs down from their third-floor apartment because the elevator had been broken for 6 days, and the landlord kept promising it would be fixed tomorrow. The morning air was sharp with early autumn cold, and Marcus pulled his jacket tighter as they walked the 4 blocks to Lily's school. She chattered about a science project and something funny her friend Emma had said at lunch yesterday, and Marcus made appropriate noises in response while his mind spiraled around the reunion like water circling a drain. At the school entrance, Lily stopped and turned to face him. You're going to go, right? I said I would. No, I mean you're actually going to go inside and stay. Not just drive to the parking lot and sit in your car for an hour before coming home. Marcus felt his face heat. That was one time. It was a parent-teacher conference, Dad. For me. And you still couldn't make yourself go in. There were a lot of people. There were like 12 people. Exactly. A lot. Lily stepped forward and hugged him hard around the middle. She'd grown 3 inches in the past year, and Marcus realized with a jolt that she'd be taller than him before high school. Time was moving too fast, carrying her forward while he stayed frozen in place. I love you, she said into his chest, even though you're weird. Love you too, kiddo, even though you're mean. She pulled back and grinned at him. I learned from the best. He watched her disappear into the school building, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, and felt the familiar weight of inadequacy settle over him like a wet blanket. How was he supposed to teach her to be brave when he couldn't even walk into a room full of people he used to know? The drive to work took 45 minutes in typical traffic, and Marcus spent most of it trying not to think about the reunion. He worked for a tech company called Axiom Dynamics, a name that sounded more impressive than it was. Most people had never heard of them. They didn't make phones or social media platforms or search engines. They made infrastructure, the invisible architecture that held the internet together. Boring stuff. Important stuff. Stuff that made Marcus feel both essential and entirely replaceable. He pulled into the parking garage at 8:53, grabbed his laptop bag from the passenger seat and headed for the elevators. The office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower that looked exactly like every other glass tower in the tech district. Marcus had worked here for 9 years, and he still sometimes got confused about which building was his. His desk was in the middle of a sea of identical desks, each occupied by someone staring at multiple monitors with varying degrees of intensity. Marcus nodded to a few colleagues as he passed. Priya from data analytics, Tom from infrastructure, Chen from... he wasn't entirely sure what, and settled into his chair. 3 emails waited for him, all marked urgent, none actually urgent. He was halfway through responding to the first when his desk phone rang. Marcus Hale. Conference room 7. Now. The voice belonged to David Chen, Axiom's CTO and one of the few people in the company who genuinely terrified Marcus. Not because Chen was cruel or unreasonable, but because he saw things other people missed and asked questions that exposed exactly how much you didn't know. I'll be right there. Marcus saved his work and headed for the elevators, trying to remember if he'd screwed something up recently. Conference room 7 was executive territory, the kind of place where people got promoted or fired, but rarely anything in between. Chen was waiting when Marcus arrived, along with 2 other people Marcus recognized but had never actually spoken to. Patricia Okonkwo, the CEO, and someone he vaguely remembered as being from legal or finance or some other department that existed in the theoretical space beyond engineering. Close the door, Chen said. Marcus did. His heart was doing something irregular in his chest. Patricia gestured to a chair. Sit down, Marcus. You look like you're about to pass out. He sat. Did I do something wrong? Wrong? Patricia laughed, a sound like wind chimes. No. Actually, you did something very right. Several somethings, apparently. Marcus blinked. I don't understand. Chen leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. The compression algorithm you submitted last month. The one you said was just a side project. Walk me through it again. Marcus had submitted it on a Tuesday afternoon, half convinced it was a waste of time. He'd been working on it for 2 years in the gaps between meetings and deadlines, tweaking and testing in the small hours after Lily went to bed. It was an attempt to solve a problem that had been plaguing data transmission for years: how to compress massive amounts of information without losing fidelity or speed. It's not really finished, Marcus said. I mean, the core concept works, but there are still edge cases I haven't solved, and the implementation would require significant infrastructure changes. Marcus, Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. Stop talking yourself out of this. We ran your algorithm against every compression standard currently in use. It's 40% more efficient than anything on the market. Marcus felt the room tilt slightly. 40%? 43 to be precise, said the person from legal or finance. Do you understand what that means? It means it works better than I thought? Chen laughed, an actual laugh, which Marcus had never heard before. It means you just saved every company using our infrastructure millions of dollars annually in bandwidth costs. It means you potentially created a new industry standard. It means, Marcus, that you're about to become a very important person. I don't want to be important, Marcus said automatically. The words hung in the air. Patricia and Chen exchanged a look. That's exactly why you're the right person for this, Patricia said. Most people who create something this valuable immediately start thinking about how to cash out or leverage it into some VP position they're not qualified for. You submitted it with a note saying, this might be useful. It might be, Marcus said weakly. We're forming a new division, Chen said, built entirely around implementing your algorithm across our infrastructure and licensing it to other companies. We need someone to head it up, someone who understands the technology from the ground up. The implication settled over Marcus like snow. You want me to run it? We want you to consider running it, Patricia corrected. This isn't a small thing. It would mean a significant change in responsibility, compensation, visibility. You'd be managing a team, interfacing with clients, representing the company at conferences and industry events. All things Marcus was spectacularly bad at, all things that made his stomach clench with anxiety. I need to think about it, he said. Of course. Take the weekend. We'll talk Monday. Patricia stood, signaling the end of the meeting. For what it's worth, Marcus, I've been watching you for years. You're the kind of person who makes everyone around them better without even trying. That's rare. Don't waste it by being too scared to step up. Marcus left the conference room in a daze. He made it back to his desk, opened his laptop, and stared at the screen without seeing anything. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily's school. Reminder, fall fundraiser next Thursday. Volunteers needed. He added it to his calendar and tried to focus on work. The algorithms refused to make sense. The code looked like hieroglyphics. All he could think about was Patricia's words. You're about to become a very important person, and how desperately he wanted to believe that and how terrified he was that it wasn't true. At lunch, he sat in his car in the parking garage and ate a sandwich he didn't taste. He thought about calling someone, sharing the news, but there was no one to call. His parents had passed away before Lily was born. His college friends had drifted away during the divorce, choosing Elena's orbit over his. He had colleagues, but not friends, acquaintances, but not confidants. He had Lily, and tomorrow night he would have a room full of people who remembered him as the guy who wasn't good enough for Elena Cross. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. Marcus went through the motions, answered emails, attended a meeting he barely remembered afterward. At 5:30, he packed up and drove to Lily's after-school program, where he found her building something elaborate out of Legos with 2 other kids. How was your day? She asked as they walked to the car. Weird, Marcus admitted. How was yours? Also weird. Madison Pritchett told everyone I was lying about my dad working in tech because I don't have expensive shoes. Marcus felt anger flare hot in his chest. What did you say? I told her my dad could buy me expensive shoes, but we're saving money for college because we're smart about the future. She climbed into the car and buckled her seatbelt. Then I told her that judging people by their shoes was the mark of a simple mind. Marcus started the car. Did you really say mark of a simple mind? I've been reading your books. Those are textbooks about network architecture. Still counts as reading. They stopped at this grocery store on the way home. Lily insisted on getting the good cereal, the kind with the chocolate pieces, and Marcus didn't have the energy to argue. In the checkout line, he found himself staring at a magazine rack full of glossy covers promising better lives, better bodies, better versions of yourself for 3 easy payments. "Dad, you're doing the thing again." He blinked. "Sorry." "Are you going to tell me what happened at work?" "Nothing happened." "You're a terrible liar." Marcus paid for the groceries and carried them to the car. Only when they were both buckled in did he speak. "They want to promote me. Make me head of a new division." Lily's eyes went wide. "That's amazing. Why do you look like someone died?" "I'm not good at that stuff, managing people, being in charge. You're in charge of me. I turned out okay." "That's different." "How?" "Because you love me regardless," Marcus thought. "Because you don't care if I'm successful or impressive or important. Because you're 9 and you think I'm a superhero even though I can barely keep the lights on." "It just is," he said. They drove home in silence. Lily was quiet through dinner, through homework, through her bedtime routine. As Marcus tucked her in, she grabbed his hand. "The reunion is tomorrow," she said. "I know. Are you going to go?" Marcus looked at his daughter, this miracle person he'd somehow managed to raise despite all evidence suggesting he had no idea what he was doing, and felt something shift in his chest. "Yeah," he said. "I'm going to go." "Good." She squeezed his hand. "Remember what I said about making people normal-sized?" "I remember." "And Dad?" She yawned, already half asleep. "Maybe it's time to stop being so scared all the time." Marcus sat with her until her breathing evened out into sleep, then retreated to the living room. He opened his laptop and pulled up the reunion details. The event was at the old Riverside Hotel, the same place where he'd taken Elena to prom 17 years ago, back when he'd thought loving someone hard enough could make them love you back the same way. His phone buzzed, an email from Patricia. "Whatever you decide Monday, I meant what I said. You're wasting your potential being invisible." Marcus closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this city, Elena was probably getting ready for tomorrow too. Picking out an outfit that would make her look successful and untouchable. Rehearsing stories about her career in corporate law, her partnership at some prestigious firm, her life that had turned out exactly the way she'd always planned. And Marcus would show up in a jacket he'd owned for 6 years and shoes he'd resold twice, and she would look at him the way she'd looked at him the day she asked for a divorce, like he was a rough draft of a person who never made it to the final version. Except this time, something was different. This time, Marcus knew something she didn't. He'd built something that mattered, created something valuable, turned himself into someone Patricia Okonkwo thought was worth promoting. He still didn't know if he believed it, but maybe, for one night, he could pretend. Marcus slept badly and woke early. Saturday morning felt different, charged with the nervous energy that had him alphabetizing the spice cabinet for a 3rd time before Lily emerged from her room. "You're doing it again," she announced. "I know." Should I be worried? Probably not. They made pancakes together, Lily mixing while Marcus stood at the griddle. She was getting better at not spilling batter everywhere, and Marcus felt a ridiculous surge of pride at this tiny marker of her growing up. "What time is the thing?" Lily asked. 7. "What are you going to wear?" "Clothes, hopefully." She rolled her eyes. "You know what I mean. You need to look good, like successful person good." Marcus flipped a pancake. "I don't really have successful person clothes." "Then we should go shopping." "I'm not going shopping." "Dad." Lily set down the mixing bowl and fixed him with a look. "You're going to walk into that room full of people who haven't seen you in forever. First impressions matter. You taught me that." "That was about job interviews. This is basically a job interview for your past self. You're showing them who you became." Marcus wanted to argue, but she had a point. He'd spent so many years being invisible, fading into the background, that he'd forgotten how to present himself as someone worth noticing. "Fine," he said. "We'll go look, but I'm not buying anything expensive." Lily grinned. "Deal." They spent the afternoon at a mall Marcus rarely visited, navigating through stores that smelled like cologne and played music too loud. Lily had inherited Elena's eye for style, and she steered Marcus toward clothes he would never have chosen for himself. A dark blazer that actually fit his shoulders, a shirt in a shade of blue that Lily insisted made his eyes less sad. "My eyes aren't sad," Marcus protested. "Your eyes are definitely sad. You have rescue dog eyes." "I'm not buying clothes to make my eyes less sad," but he bought them anyway, along with new shoes that Lily declared acceptable for a person who's about to prove everyone wrong. At home, Marcus tried on the complete outfit and stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The person looking back at him was familiar but strange, like seeing an old photograph and recognizing yourself only in the abstract. "You look good, Dad," Lily said from the doorway. "I look like I'm pretending to be someone else." "Maybe that's the point. Maybe you need to pretend until you remember who you actually are." Marcus changed back into his regular clothes and spent the rest of the afternoon trying not to think about the evening ahead. He helped Lily with a science project about plant cells, made an early dinner of grilled cheese and tomato soup, and generally tried to pretend this was just another Saturday. At 6:15, Lily's friend Emma's mom picked her up for a sleepover. Marcus had arranged it weeks ago, back when he'd thought he might actually go through with attending the reunion. Now it felt like he'd trapped himself. "Remember," Lily said at the door, her overnight bag slung over her shoulder. "Make her normal-sized." "I will." "And Dad?" "Yeah?" "Don't come home early just because you're scared. Actually stay. Actually talk to people." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. He watched her leave, then stood in the empty apartment for a long moment. The silence was oppressive. He could still back out, drive to the hotel, sit in the parking lot for an hour, come home and tell Lily he'd gone. She'd never know the difference. Except she would, because she was 9 and somehow wiser than he was, and she'd see the truth in his face the moment he walked through the door. Marcus showered, shaved, and put on the new clothes. He stood in front of the mirror and tried to see what Patricia saw, what Lily saw. What he desperately wanted to believe was actually there. All he saw was a 32-year-old single father who'd spent 7 years convincing himself that invisible was the same as safe. The drive to the Riverside Hotel took 23 minutes. Marcus knew because he counted every single one, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The hotel looked exactly the way he remembered, all false grandeur and aging elegance, the kind of place that had been nice once and was now just desperately trying to maintain the illusion. The parking lot was full. Marcus found a spot in the back and sat with the engine running, staring at the lit windows of the ballroom on the second floor. He could see silhouettes moving inside, people gathering, old friends reconnecting. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily. "You got this. Love you." Marcus turned off the car. He walked across the parking lot, through the lobby, up the stairs to the second floor. Music leaked out from under the ballroom doors, something upbeat and nostalgic, probably a playlist someone made by searching high school reunion songs. He stood outside the doors for a full minute, his heart doing complicated acrobatics in his chest. Then he pulled open the door and stepped inside. The room was exactly as he'd imagined. Round tables with white tablecloths, a bar in the corner, a photo booth someone had set up near the windows, name tags on a table by the entrance, arranged alphabetically. People clustered in small groups, laughing too loud, drinking too fast, performing the elaborate dance of pretending the last 15 years had been everything they'd hoped. Marcus grabbed his name tag and pressed it to his shirt. His hands were shaking. "Marcus Hale?" He turned. A woman he vaguely recognized stood there, her expression friendly but blank. Sarah something. She'd been in his calculus class. "That's me," he said. "Oh my God, I almost didn't recognize you. How have you been?" They fell into the standard reunion small talk. Jobs, cities, the universal shock at how much time had passed. Sarah worked in marketing now, lived in the suburbs, had 2 kids and a husband who was great most of the time. Marcus offered his own abbreviated version. Tech work, single parent, doing fine. "And you and Elena?" Sarah asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Divorced. 7 years now." "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know." She clearly did know. Everyone knew. The divorce had been spectacular in its mundanity. No cheating, no violence, just the slow realization that they'd built their relationship on Elena's vision of who Marcus could become, and he'd failed to transform into that person. Sarah excused herself to find her husband, and Marcus made his way to the bar. He ordered a beer he didn't want and stood at the edge of the room, watching people reconnect and remembering why he hated these things. Then he saw her. Elena stood near the windows, surrounded by a small crowd of former classmates. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than Marcus's car payment, her dark hair pulled back in a way that made her look severe and beautiful. She was laughing at something someone said, her hand resting casually on the arm of a man Marcus didn't recognize. She looked successful. She looked confident. She looked exactly like someone who'd made all the right choices and had no regrets. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He was about to turn away, find a corner to disappear into, when Elena's eyes found his across the room. For a moment, something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe? Or recognition. Then it smoothed into something cooler, more controlled. She said something to the group around her and started walking toward him. Marcus's first instinct was to run. His second was to stand there and face whatever was coming. He chose the second, mostly because his legs had stopped working. "Marcus," Elena said when she reached him, "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "Surprise," he said, and hated how weak his voice sounded. She looked him up and down, a quick assessment that felt like being inventoried. "You look good. Different." "So do you." "I'm a partner now, at Morrison and Wesley, corporate law." She said it casually, but Marcus heard the pride underneath. "And you? Still doing the tech thing?" The tech thing, as if 9 years of his life could be summarized so dismissively. "Yeah," he said, "still doing that." "That's good. Stability is important, especially with Lily." She paused. "How is she?" "She's great, smart, funny, better than I deserve." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "The self-deprecating thing. It's exhausting." Elena took a sip of her wine. "You always did that. Apologized for taking up space." Marcus felt something flare hot in his chest. "I'm not apologizing. You're doing it right now, standing there like you're sorry for existing." She shook her head, almost fondly. Some things never change. Before Marcus could respond, someone called Elena's name. She turned, waved, then looked back at him. "I should go. It was good to see you, Marcus. Really." She started to walk away, then paused. "You should come meet some people. Remind them you exist." She didn't wait for an answer. Marcus stood there, the beer growing warm in his hand, and felt 7 years of hard-won confidence crumble into dust. This was a mistake. Coming here was a mistake. He was halfway to the door when a voice stopped him. "Marcus Hale, is that you?" He turned. A man approached, older but familiar. David Chen, his CTO. Marcus blinked. "David, what are you doing here?" Chen smiled. "Class of 2009, same as you, though I was in the engineering track, not general studies. We probably never crossed paths." Marcus tried to process this information and failed. His boss had gone to his high school? "I had no idea," he managed. "Why would you? We've got 3,000 employees." Chen looked around the room. "Hell of a thing, isn't it, coming back to where you started?" "Something like that." Chen studied him. "You okay? You look like you just got punched." "I'm fine." "Liar." Chen gestured toward the bar. "Come on, let me buy you a drink, and you can tell me why you're about to bolt." They found a quiet corner away from the main crowd. Chen ordered whiskey, Marcus stuck with beer, and for a few minutes they just stood there, watching people perform their best versions of themselves. "You know what I like about you, Marcus?" Chen said finally. "No idea." "You don't bullshit. Everyone in this industry is so busy selling themselves, they forget to actually be good at anything." He sipped his drink. "You just put your head down and do the work. That's rare." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. "Patricia meant what she said yesterday," Chen continued, "about the promotion. We need someone who actually cares about building things that matter, not just someone who looks good in meetings." "I don't know if I can do it." "Why not?" "Because I'm terrified of being visible," Marcus thought. "Because the last time I tried to be someone important, I failed so completely that my wife left me." "I'm better behind the scenes," he said instead. Chen laughed. "Marcus, you created an algorithm that's going to change the entire industry. That's not behind-the-scenes work. That's legacy-level shit." Across the room, Marcus saw Elena laughing with her crowd again. She looked so comfortable, so certain of her place in the world. "What if I'm not good enough?" Marcus asked quietly. "Then you'll figure it out. Same way you figured out how to raise a kid on your own. Same way you figured out how to build something nobody else could. Chen finished his drink. You know what your real problem is? I'm guessing you're about to tell me. You're still letting other people write your story. Someone, I'm guessing your ex, convinced you that you're not the main character in your own life. And you believed them. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been sealed shut for a very long time. Before he could respond, Patricia Okonkwo appeared beside them. David, there you are. I've been looking everywhere. She noticed Marcus and smiled. Marcus, I didn't know you went to Lincoln High. Class of 2009, Marcus said automatically. Small world. Patricia looked between them. Have you told him yet? Chen grinned. Told him what? Don't play dumb. About next week. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What's next week? Patricia's expression turned serious. We're announcing the new division at the Tech Innovation Summit. Big press conference, industry leaders, the works, and we're introducing you as the director. But I haven't accepted yet. So accept. Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. Marcus, I've been in this industry for 20 years. I know talent when I see it. And I know when someone is wasting that talent by being too scared to step up. I'm not scared, Marcus said automatically. Yes, you are. And that's fine. Being scared is normal. Letting that fear make your decisions for you is not. She glanced across the room, following Marcus's earlier gaze. Is that her? The ex-wife? Marcus nodded. Patricia studied Elena for a moment. Let me guess. She's the one who convinced you that you're ordinary. Something like that. Well, she's wrong. And next week the whole industry is going to know it. Patricia touched his arm lightly. Think about it over the weekend. But Marcus, this is your moment. Don't run from it. She disappeared back into the crowd, leaving Marcus and Chen alone again. She's right, Chen said. About all of it. Marcus looked down at his beer. What if I fail? Then you'll fail. People fail all the time. It's not the end of the world. Chen turned to face him directly. But what if you don't? What if you're actually exactly as good as we think you are? The question hung in the air between them. Across the room, Elena laughed at something, the sound cutting through the noise. And Marcus realized something. She was still writing his story in her head, still casting him as the supporting character in her narrative of success. Maybe it was time to write a different ending. Okay, Marcus said quietly. Okay, what? I'll do it. The promotion, the press conference, all of it. Chen's face broke into a genuine smile. Yeah? Yeah. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something that felt almost like hope. I'm tired of being invisible. Good man. Chen raised his empty glass in a toast. To finally being seen. Marcus clinked his beer against it, and for the first time all night, he didn't feel like running. The evening stretched on, and Marcus found himself actually talking to people, old classmates he barely remembered, colleagues from work, strangers who became friendly through the strange alchemy of shared history. He discovered that he was funnier than he remembered, more interesting than he'd given himself credit for. And every so often he'd catch Elena watching him from across the room, her expression unreadable. Let her watch, Marcus thought. Let her wonder. At 11:30, as the party wound down and people started saying their goodbyes, Marcus found himself back near the windows where he'd first seen Elena. She approached him again, this time alone, her earlier confidence slightly dimmed by wine and exhaustion. So, she said, this is weird. Very. For what it's worth, you seem different, more confident, maybe. Marcus considered telling her about the promotion, about the press conference, about the fact that her narrative of his failure was about to be very publicly rewritten, but something stopped him. People change, he said instead. I guess they do. Elena looked at him for a long moment. I should go. Early flight tomorrow. Take care of yourself, Elena. She started to leave, then turned back. Marcus, I'm glad you came tonight. It was good to see you. The real you, I mean, not the version I created in my head. She walked away before he could respond, leaving Marcus alone by the windows, watching the parking lot empty out below. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily. Still alive? Still alive, he typed back. Actually had a good time. What? Dad, are you drunk? Maybe a little. Emma's mom picking you up tomorrow? Yeah. 10 a.m. Did you talk to people? I talked to people. Did you see her? Marcus smiled. I saw her, and I made her normal sized. I'm so proud. Also, you're definitely drunk. Go home. Going now. Love you, kiddo. Love you too. Drive safe. Marcus pocketed his phone and made his way out of the ballroom, down the stairs, through the lobby that smelled like old carpet and broken dreams. In the parking lot, the cool night air felt like absolution. He drove home slowly, carefully, the city lights blurring past his windows. His apartment was dark and empty, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like a space he'd chosen, a life he'd built deliberately. Marcus changed into sweatpants, made tea he wouldn't drink, and sat on the couch in the dark. Monday, he would accept the promotion. Next week, he would stand in front of industry leaders and let them see what he'd built. Eventually, the whole world would know that Marcus Hale wasn't invisible after all. But tonight, he just sat in the quiet and felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years, proud of who he'd become. His phone buzzed one more time. An email from Patricia, sent at 11:47 p.m. Glad you came tonight. Glad you're ready. You're going to change everything. Marcus read it twice, then set his phone aside and closed his eyes. For the first time in as long as he could remember, he believed it might actually be true. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of brightness that felt personally offensive. Marcus woke on the couch at 7:15, his neck stiff and his mouth tasting like something had died in it. The events of the previous night came back in fragments. Elena's dismissive smile, Chen's unexpected appearance, Patricia's midnight email that had felt like a benediction. He sat up slowly and checked his phone. 2 messages waited. One from Lily. Emma's mom says we're making pancakes. I told her yours are better. Don't let me down. The second was from a number he didn't recognize. Marcus, this is Tom Winters from TechCrunch. Patricia Okonkwo gave me your contact. Would love to chat about the compression algorithm before the summit. Free this week? Marcus stared at the message until the screen went dark. TechCrunch. Patricia hadn't been exaggerating about the press conference being a big deal. He showered, made coffee that was too strong, and spent an hour cleaning the apartment in a futile attempt to organize his thoughts. At 9:45, he drove to Emma's house to pick up Lily, arriving exactly as the 2 girls emerged from the front door, both talking over each other about something involving slime and a minor kitchen disaster. Dad! Lily bounded toward the car with the kind of energy that should be illegal before noon. How was it? Tell me everything. Did she cry? Did you make her cry? Nobody cried, Marcus said, pulling away from the curb. It was fine. Fine? That's it? You're killing me here. What do you want me to say? Lily twisted in her seat to face him fully. Did you talk to her? Yes. And? And we talked. It was civil. Nothing dramatic happened. This was technically true, but it left out the part where Elena had looked at him like he was still the same failure she'd divorced, and the part where Marcus had discovered his boss had gone to his high school, and the part where he'd agreed to accept a promotion that terrified him. You're being weird again, Lily observed. I'm not being weird. You have your weird face on, the one where you're thinking too hard about stuff. Marcus pulled into their apartment complex and parked. I talked to my boss last night. He went to my high school. I didn't know. That's crazy. What are the odds? Pretty low, actually. They climbed the stairs to the apartment. Inside, Lily dropped her overnight bag by the door and immediately raided the kitchen for snacks. Marcus watched her move through the space with the casual ownership of someone who'd never doubted she belonged there and felt a sharp pang of something he couldn't name. Dad, you're staring. Sorry. Seriously, what happened? You're being extra weird. Marcus sat down at the kitchen table. They want to announce my promotion at this big tech conference next week, with press and everything. Lily froze mid-bite of an apple. Like, announce? In front of people? In front of a lot of people. That's amazing. She paused. Why do you look like you're about to throw up? I'm not good at that stuff. Public speaking, being the center of attention. Lily set down the apple and pulled out a chair across from him. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to freak out for like 2 days. Then you're going to practice what you're going to say until you have it memorized. Then you're going to show up and be amazing because you're actually good at stuff even though you pretend you're not. That's your plan? That's the plan. You have a better one? Marcus didn't. They spent the rest of Sunday in a comfortable routine. Grocery shopping, meal prep for the week, a movie Lily picked that Marcus pretended to watch while his brain spun in circles. That night, after tucking Lily in, he sat at his laptop and tried to draft an acceptance speech. The cursor blinked at him accusingly. He typed 3 sentences, deleted 2, stared at the remaining one until it stopped making sense. At midnight, he gave up and went to bed. Monday morning came too fast. Marcus dropped Lily at school, fielded her increasingly specific questions about what he was going to wear to the press conference, and arrived at Axiom's office 17 minutes early. The familiar anxiety of walking into the building felt different now, charged with a new kind of pressure. He'd barely sat down at his desk when his phone rang. Patricia's extension. "Conference room 7, she said without preamble. "Bring coffee. You're going to need it." The room was already full when Marcus arrived. Patricia, Chen, 3 people he recognized from legal and PR, and a woman he'd never seen before who looked like she charged by the hour just to make eye contact. "Marcus, this is Diane Foster," Patricia said. "She's handling media strategy for the summit." Diane extended a hand that felt like shaking ice. "Mr. Hale, I've heard impressive things." "Thanks," Marcus managed. "Sit." Patricia gestured to an empty chair. "Diane's going to walk us through the rollout schedule." For the next 90 minutes, Marcus listened to a detailed breakdown of his immediate future. The Tech Innovation Summit was Friday, 4 days away. The press conference would be at 2 p.m., following a morning of panel discussions. Marcus would give a brief presentation on the compression algorithm, field questions from journalists, and participate in a roundtable discussion about the future of data infrastructure. Brief presentation apparently meant 20 minutes. Field questions meant being prepared for hostile inquiries about methodology, implementation challenges, and competitive advantages. The roundtable would include executives from 3 major tech companies, all of whom would be very interested in either licensing his algorithm or finding ways to undermine it. "Any questions?" Diane asked when she'd finished. Marcus had approximately 47 questions, but his mouth had stopped working. "He's fine," Chen said, reading his expression. "Just overwhelmed. That's normal." "We'll need to do media training," Diane continued, making notes on her tablet. "Tomorrow, 3 hours, starting at 9. I'll send you prep materials tonight. Review them. Memorize your key talking points. And for the love of everything, do not go off script during the Q&A. What if I don't know the answer to something? Then you say, "That's an excellent question, and I'd need to review the data before giving you a definitive answer." Never guess. Never speculate. Never apologize for not knowing. Marcus nodded, feeling his stomach tighten. The meeting broke up around 11. As people filed out, Patricia touched Marcus's arm. "Walk with me." They took the stairs down to the building's small courtyard, a space filled with concrete benches and struggling plants that nobody had watered in weeks. Patricia sat and gestured for Marcus to join her. "You looked like you were about to pass out in there," she said. "I wasn't about to pass out." "Liar." She smiled, taking the edge off the word. "Talk to me. What's going through your head?" Marcus watched a pigeon investigate a discarded sandwich wrapper. "What if I mess this up?" "You won't. You don't know that." "I do, actually." "You want to know how?" "How?" Patricia leaned back against the bench. 5 years ago, we had a similar situation. Engineer created something brilliant. We wanted to promote him to director level. Smart guy, technically gifted, absolutely terrified of public speaking. We pushed him into it anyway. You know what happened? He failed spectacularly and became a cautionary tale. He gave the worst presentation I've ever seen. Forgot half his talking points, fumbled the demo, looked like he was being held hostage. She paused. Then during the Q&A, someone asked him why his approach was better than the industry standard, and he forgot to be scared. He just talked about the work, the problem he was trying to solve, why it mattered. It was honest and passionate and completely authentic. The next day, 3 companies contacted us about licensing his technology. What's your point? My point is that nobody cares if you're polished. They care if you're real. You built something that matters. Just tell them why. Marcus absorbed this. Who was the engineer? David Chen, your boss. Patricia stood. He'll tell you the same thing if you ask. Everyone's terrified their first time in the spotlight. The trick is not letting the terror make you dishonest. She left him alone in the courtyard. Marcus sat for another 10 minutes, watching the pigeon give up on the sandwich wrapper and move on to more promising garbage. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily's school. Reminder, parent-teacher conference, Thursday, 4 p.m. Please confirm. He confirmed, mentally calculating whether he could make it work around the summit preparation. Probably not. He'd have to reschedule. Again. The afternoon passed in a blur of emails and preparation. At 3 p.m., Diane sent over a 50-page document titled Media Training Primer and Key Messaging Framework. Marcus opened it, scanned the first page, and felt his will to live drain away. At 5:30, he closed his laptop and drove to pick up Lily. She was waiting outside the after-school program with her friend Madison Pritchett, both girls engaged in what appeared to be a heated debate about something Marcus couldn't hear. Dad! Lily broke away from Madison and jogged to the car. Tell Madison that algorithm complexity isn't the same as code elegance. Marcus blinked. What? She says her dad told her that the most efficient code is always the best code. I said that's not true because sometimes readable code is more important than optimal code. Madison approached, her expression skeptical. My dad works at Google. He knows what he's talking about. My dad created an algorithm that's going to change the entire industry, Lily shot back. Marcus felt something warm bloom in his chest. Lily, get in the car. But I'm winning the argument. Car. Now. Lily climbed in, still glaring at Madison through the window. As they pulled away, she turned to Marcus. You agree with me, right? About the readable code thing? Generally, yes, though it depends on the application. See? I was right. She settled back in her seat, satisfied. Madison Pritchett thinks she knows everything because her dad works at Google. You just told her I created an algorithm that's going to change the industry. Well, you did. You can't use my work to win arguments with your friends. Why not? You never use it for anything. Marcus didn't have a good answer for that. At home, Lily had homework that required Marcus's help understanding fractions, which somehow turned into a discussion about percentages, which led to Lily asking what percentage of his day Marcus spent being worried about stuff. I don't spend all day worrying. You spend like 70%, at least. That's not true. Okay, 60%, but that's still too much. She looked up from her math worksheet. Are you worried about the press conference thing? A little. You shouldn't be. You're smart and you made something cool. Just tell people about it. It's more complicated than that. Why? Because I'm terrified of being seen and found wanting, Marcus thought. Because the last time I let people look at me closely, they decided I wasn't worth keeping. It just is, he said. Lily gave him a look that suggested she knew exactly what he wasn't saying, but she let it drop. Tuesday morning brought the media training session. Marcus arrived at a conference room on the building's executive floor to find Diane Foster waiting with another woman who introduced herself as Michelle, a former broadcast journalist who now coached executives on public speaking. Let's start with the basics, Michelle said. Stand up. Show me your natural presenting posture. Marcus stood. Michelle circled him like a predator evaluating prey. You're making yourself smaller, she observed. Shoulders forward, head down, hands clasped in front like you're apologizing for existing. Why? I don't know. Yes, you do. Think about it. Marcus tried to think about it and came up empty. I'm just standing. You're just hiding. Big difference. Michelle positioned herself in front of him. Watch me. She stood tall, shoulders back, chin level, hands relaxed at her sides. Everything about her posture communicated confidence and authority. Your turn. Marcus tried to copy her and felt ridiculous. Better, Michelle said. But you're still apologizing with your eyes. Look at me. Actually see me. Don't just glance and look away. They spent an hour on body language alone, then another hour on vocal delivery, projection, pacing, eliminating filler words. By noon, Marcus's brain felt like mush. Let's take 15, Diane said. Then we'll start on the actual presentation. Marcus escaped to the bathroom and stared at himself in the mirror. The person looking back was familiar but strange, shoulders back, chin up, eyes that were trying very hard to look confident and mostly just looked tired. His phone buzzed. A text from Chen. "How's the torture session?" "About as fun as it sounds," Marcus replied. "Hang in there. Diane's brutal but effective. You'll thank her later." "Will I?" "Probably not, but you'll be good at this by Friday." Marcus pocketed his phone and returned to the conference room. The afternoon session focused on the actual presentation, key points, transition phrases, how to handle technical questions from non-technical journalists. Diane had prepared a slide deck that Marcus was supposed to memorize, complete with carefully crafted metaphors comparing data compression to various everyday objects. "Think of bandwidth like a highway," Marcus read from the script. "My algorithm is like adding more lanes without building new roads." "You sound like you're reading a script," Michelle observed. "I am reading a script." "Then stop. Tell me about your algorithm in your own words." Marcus set down the paper. Data compression is about finding patterns in information and representing them more efficiently. Most current algorithms prioritize either speed or quality, but they can't optimize both simultaneously. I found a way to do both by approaching the problem from a different angle. "Better," Michelle said. "But what angle? Be specific without being technical." Marcus thought about how to explain it. Most compression algorithms work sequentially. They process data in a straight line. Mine works spatially, treating data like a three-dimensional object and compressing it from multiple directions simultaneously. Now you're making it complicated again. Because it is complicated. Then make it simple. Pretend you're explaining it to your daughter. Marcus paused. He'd actually explained it to Lily a few months ago when she'd asked what he did all day at work. "Imagine you're packing a suitcase," he said. "Most people pack one item at a time, fitting things in as they go. My algorithm looks at everything you need to pack, figures out the optimal arrangement, and then packs it all at once. You fit more stuff in the same space, and it's organized so you can find things faster." Michelle smiled. "Perfect. Use that." They ran through the presentation 6 more times. By the time Marcus left at 6 p.m., his voice was hoarse and his head pounded. He picked up Lily, grabbed takeout on the way home, and spent the evening helping her with a book report while simultaneously trying not to think about Friday. Wednesday brought more preparation. Marcus spent the morning in a session with the legal team, reviewing what he could and couldn't say about the algorithm's technical specifications. Axiom was in the process of filing patents, and any detailed disclosure could jeopardize their intellectual property claims. "Keep it conceptual," the lead attorney advised. "Big picture stuff. Save the technical specifications for private discussions under NDA." "What if someone asks a specific technical question during the Q&A?" "Defer. Say something like, 'I'd be happy to discuss implementation details in a more appropriate setting.'" At lunch, Marcus sat alone in his car and ate a sandwich he barely tasted. His phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "This is Marcus." "Mr. Haley, Tom Winters from TechCrunch. We spoke via text earlier this week. Do you have a few minutes?" Marcus's stomach dropped. "Sure." "Great. I wanted to get some background before the summit. How long have you been working on the compression algorithm?" "About 2 years." "And you developed it independently, outside of Axiom's R&D department?" "It started as a side project. I brought it to the company once I had a working prototype." "Interesting. And before this, your career has been primarily back-end infrastructure work, correct?" Marcus wondered how Winters had gotten that information. "That's right. So this represents a significant departure from your previous focus. What inspired the shift?" The real answer was complicated. Frustration with existing tools, insomnia-driven late-night coding sessions, a need to prove to himself he could build something that mattered. But Marcus didn't think any of that would make good copy. "I saw a problem that needed solving," he said carefully. "The current solutions weren't efficient enough for the scale of data we're handling now, so I tried to build something better." "And you succeeded. Patricia Okonkwo told me your algorithm is 43% more efficient than anything currently on the market. That's not incremental improvement, that's revolutionary." "I don't know about revolutionary." "I do. I've been covering tech innovation for 12 years. This is the kind of breakthrough that changes the landscape. papers rustled on Winters's end. I'm also hearing rumors that several major companies are already interested in licensing. Can you confirm? I can't comment on business negotiations. Of course. Let me ask you this. What do you think the biggest impact of this technology will be? Marcus thought about it. Accessibility. Right now, high-quality data transmission is expensive, which means it's primarily available to large companies and people in wealthy countries. More efficient compression could bring that cost down significantly. That means better internet access in rural areas, cheaper streaming services, faster communication for remote work. It democratizes information. There was a pause on the other end. That's a great quote. Can I use that? I guess. Perfect. Last question. This is your first time in the public spotlight at this level. How does it feel? Terrifying, Marcus thought. Like standing naked in front of a room full of people who are taking notes on your inadequacies. It's an adjustment, he said instead. But I'm focused on the work, not the attention. Very diplomatic. I'll let you go. See you Friday. The call ended. Marcus sat in his car, staring at the phone, wondering what he'd just agreed to. When he returned to the office, he found an email from Diane with the subject line, Media Coverage Tracking. She'd attached links to 3 different tech news sites, all of which had posted articles about the upcoming summit announcement. 2 of them mentioned Marcus by name. He read them with a growing sense of unreality. The articles described him as a rising star in data compression and a dark horse innovator. One quoted an anonymous industry expert saying Marcus's work could be the most significant advancement in bandwidth optimization in a decade. None of it felt real. Marcus Hale, the guy who'd spent 7 years being invisible, was suddenly being discussed in tech publications like he mattered. His desk phone rang. Chen's extension. Did you see the coverage? Chen asked. Unfortunately. What do you mean, unfortunately? This is great publicity. It's a lot of pressure. Welcome to being successful. It's uncomfortable. Chen paused. You doing okay? Really? Marcus considered lying, then decided against it. I'm terrified. Good. That means you care. The people who aren't scared are usually the ones who screw it up. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. Wasn't meant to be reassuring, was meant to be honest. Chen's voice softened slightly. You're going to be fine, Marcus. Trust me. Marcus wanted to believe him. Thursday arrived with the parent-teacher conference he'd forgotten to reschedule. He left work at 3:30, drove to Lily's school, and sat in a too-small chair across from Mrs. Anderson, her 4th-grade teacher. Mr. Hale, thanks for coming. Mrs. Anderson pulled out a folder thick with papers. I wanted to talk to you about Lily's performance this semester. Marcus braced himself for bad news. She's exceptional, Mrs. Anderson continued. Top of her class in math and science. Her reading comprehension scores are off the charts, and her critical thinking skills are honestly remarkable for her age. Relief flooded through Marcus. That's great. It is, but I'm also a little concerned about her social development. Mrs. Anderson pulled out what appeared to be an incident report. She's been getting into arguments with other students. Nothing physical, but she can be quite combative. Combative how? Last week, she told another student that his understanding of photosynthesis was fundamentally flawed and intellectually lazy. The week before, she corrected a classmate's grammar so aggressively that the girl cried. Marcus closed his eyes. I'll talk to her. I'm not saying she's wrong. She's usually right, actually. But she needs to learn how to be right without making other people feel stupid. Mrs. Anderson smiled gently. She's incredibly bright, Mr. Hale. She just needs to develop some emotional intelligence to match that IQ. She gets that from me, the being right thing. I assumed as much. Mrs. Anderson closed the folder. How are things at home? She mentioned you have a big work thing coming up. A presentation, tomorrow, actually. Are you nervous? Marcus laughed, a short bark of sound. Is it that obvious? Lily said you've been doing the spacing out thing all week. Her words. She's not wrong, Mrs. Anderson's expression turned thoughtful. Can I tell you something, parent to parent? Sure. My daughter is about Lily's age, and the thing I've learned is that kids are like mirrors. They reflect what they see in us. If Lily's watching you be brave enough to do something scary, she's learning that scared and brave can exist at the same time. She leaned forward slightly. That's an important lesson. Marcus hadn't thought about it that way. Thanks. Good luck tomorrow. Lily's very proud of you, you know. She tells anyone who'll listen that her dad is going to change the tech industry. Marcus felt his throat tighten. She said that? Multiple times, usually while correcting someone's understanding of data compression. He left the conference feeling a strange mix of pride and pressure. In the car, Lily waited with a book open in her lap. How bad was it? She asked. You told Madison Pritchett that her understanding of photosynthesis was fundamentally flawed and intellectually lazy? She said plants breathe out carbon dioxide. That's not even close to right. You made her feel stupid. I made her feel correctly informed. There's a difference. Marcus started the car. You can be right and kind at the same time. Can you? What's that supposed to mean? Lily closed her book. You spend all your time being kind and never being right. You let people underestimate you because you don't want to make them uncomfortable. That's not better. Marcus didn't have an answer for that. They drove home in silence. That night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror and practiced his presentation one more time. The words came easier now, more natural, but every time he imagined actually standing in front of a room full of journalists and industry executives, his heart started doing complicated arrhythmias. At 11 p.m., his phone buzzed. A text from a number he hadn't seen in years. I heard about the summit. Congratulations. You must be very proud. Elena Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it without responding. Friday morning arrived too fast. Marcus woke at 5 a.m., gave up on sleep, and made coffee while watching the sky lighten through the kitchen window. At 6:30, Lily emerged from her room in pajamas, her hair a disaster. It's today, she announced. It's today. Are you going to throw up? Probably not, but maybe. She pattered into the kitchen and poured herself orange juice. Want to know a secret? Always. I'm scared for you, like actually nervous that something will go wrong. Marcus set down his coffee. Lily, but I'm also excited because I think you're going to be amazing, and I want to watch everyone realize what I already know. What do you already know? That you're the smartest person I've ever met, and the kindest, and that you built something that matters. She took a drink of juice. And that Mom was an idiot for leaving you. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Don't talk about your mother that way. Why not? It's true. Because it's not kind. And you just told Madison Pritchett that being right without being kind is the same as being wrong. Lily considered this. Fine. Mom made a choice that I personally disagree with based on available evidence. Better. They got ready in comfortable silence. Marcus put on the suit he'd bought for the occasion. Navy blue, well-fitted, nothing flashy. Lily insisted on adjusting his tie 3 times until it met her standards. You look good, Dad, she said finally. Like someone important. I'm not important. You are today. He dropped her at school at 8:15. She hugged him hard at the entrance, her arms tight around his middle. Make them see you, she whispered. The real you. Then she was gone, disappearing into the building with her backpack bouncing. Marcus drove to the summit venue, a massive convention center downtown. The parking lot was already half full. Inside, crowds of people milled around registration tables, collecting badges and conference materials. Marcus picked up his badge, a special one marked speaker, in red letters, and made his way to the green room Diane had specified. Patricia and Chen were already there, along with Diane and several people Marcus didn't recognize. There he is, Patricia said. Ready? Marcus's mouth was too dry to answer. He's ready, Chen said firmly. Marcus, you're going to be great. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Final run-throughs, sound checks, brief conversations with other presenters. At 1:45, Diane appeared at his elbow. You're on in 15. How are you feeling? Like I might pass out. Perfect. That means you care. She straightened his already straight tie. Remember, be honest, be clear, be yourself. You've got this. At 1:55, Marcus stood in the wings of the main auditorium, listening to Patricia deliver the introduction. The room was packed, easily 300 people, maybe more. Journalists with recording equipment, industry executives, Axiom employees who'd come to watch. And somewhere in that crowd, Marcus knew, were people who would judge him, question him, decide whether he was legitimate or just another overhyped engineer who'd gotten lucky. His hands were shaking. His heart was trying to escape his chest. Patricia's voice carried across the room. Please join me in welcoming Marcus Hale, Director of Innovation and the architect of what may be the most significant advancement in data compression technology in the past decade. The applause was thunderous. Marcus stepped onto the stage and everything changed. The lights were brighter than Marcus had expected. He walked to the center of the stage, his legs moving on autopilot while his brain screamed at him to run. The podium stood like a barrier between him and 300 pairs of eyes, and he gripped its edges hard enough that his knuckles went white. The applause faded. Silence settled over the room like a held breath. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again. I'm not good at this. The words hung in the air. This wasn't the script. This wasn't what Diane had drilled into him for 3 days. But it was the truth, and somehow that made it easier to say. Public speaking, I mean. I'm better with code than people. Always have been. He found Patricia in the front row, her expression unreadable. But my boss told me that nobody cares if I'm polished. They care if I'm real, so I'm going to try that instead. A ripple of something. Amusement, maybe, or curiosity moved through the audience. Marcus clicked to the first slide. The image showed a simple suitcase, half-packed with clothes arranged haphazardly. Most of you probably don't think about data compression unless something goes wrong. Your video buffers. Your download takes too long. Your conference call freezes at the worst possible moment. But compression is everywhere. It's the invisible architecture holding the internet together. He clicked to the next slide, showing the same suitcase packed efficiently, every item in its optimal position. Current compression algorithms work sequentially. They process information one piece at a time, making decisions about each element individually. It's effective, but it's not optimal. My approach treats data as a three-dimensional object and compresses it from multiple directions simultaneously. The technical explanation came easier than expected. Marcus found himself relaxing into the material, forgetting the crowd, just talking about the work the way he would explain it to Lily or Chen or anyone who genuinely wanted to understand. 20 minutes passed faster than he'd thought possible. When he reached the final slide, he paused and looked out at the audience. The real question isn't whether this technology works. It does. The question is what we do with it. Right now, high-quality data transmission is expensive, which means it's mostly available to people who can afford it. More efficient compression could change that. It could bring better internet access to rural communities, cheaper streaming services for families on tight budgets, faster communication for remote workers in developing countries. It democratizes information. He stopped, feeling exposed. That matters more than the technical specifications. At least to me. The applause started before he finished stepping away from the podium. It was louder this time, more sustained. Marcus made it to the wings before his legs started shaking. Patricia appeared beside him. You went off script. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. That was perfect. She squeezed his shoulder. Now comes the hard part. The Q&A session was held in a smaller conference room down the hall. Marcus sat at a long table with Patricia on one side and Chen on the other, facing rows of journalists holding recording devices like weapons. Diane stood at the back of the room, her expression calm but watchful. Tom Winters from TechCrunch raised his hand first. Mr. Hale, you mentioned democratizing information. But realistically, won't the companies that license this technology just use the cost savings to increase their profit margins rather than passing savings to consumers? Marcus had expected this question. Diane had prepared a diplomatic answer about market forces and competitive pressure, but looking at Winter's face, he decided on honesty instead. Probably, he said. At least at first. That's how capitalism works, but compression efficiency creates competitive advantages. If one company offers better service at the same price point because of superior technology, others have to match it or lose market share. Eventually, the savings trickle down. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Winters scribbled notes. Another hand went up, belonging to a woman Marcus didn't recognize. Sarah Chen, Bloomberg Tech. Your algorithm represents a significant leap forward, but you're relatively unknown in the industry. No published papers, no conference presentations, no public-facing work until now. Why the sudden emergence? Marcus felt the question like a punch. It was polite, but underneath was the real inquiry. Who are you, and why should we believe you're legitimate? I've been working in tech infrastructure for 9 years, he said carefully. Back-end development. The kind of work that keeps systems running but doesn't generate headlines. I developed this algorithm as a side project because I saw a problem that needed solving, not because I was trying to build a public profile. But surely you recognize the commercial value. Eventually. But that wasn't the initial motivation. Then what was? Marcus thought about those late nights after Lily went to bed, staring at code until his eyes burned, trying to build something that proved he wasn't the failure Elena had implied he was. But he couldn't say that. I wanted to make something that mattered, he said instead. Sarah Chen nodded, writing something down. The questions continued. Technical inquiries about implementation, business questions about licensing, skeptical probes about whether the efficiency gains were sustainable at scale. Marcus answered as honestly as he could, deferring when he didn't know, admitting uncertainty when it existed. 40 minutes in, a man in the back row raised his hand. He was older than most of the journalists, his suit expensive, his expression calculating. Richard Morrison, Morrison and Wesley Corporate Law. The name hit Marcus like cold water. Morrison and Wesley, Elena's firm. Mr. Hale, I'm curious about the intellectual property timeline. You said you developed this as a side project. Does that mean you were working on it while employed at Axiom Dynamics? Marcus saw where this was going. I developed it on my own time, using my own equipment. But informed by knowledge and experience gained through your employment. There's a legal gray area there regarding who owns the intellectual property. Patricia leaned forward, her voice sharp. Mr. Morrison, this press conference isn't the appropriate venue for legal speculation. If you have concerns about IP ownership, I'm sure your firm can contact our legal department directly. Of course. Morrison smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm simply pointing out that Mr. Hale's sudden prominence raises interesting questions about proprietary development and employment contracts. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt his face heat. Chen spoke for the first time. For the record, Axiom's legal team has thoroughly reviewed the development timeline and IP ownership. Mr. Hale followed all protocols, and the company is confident in its legal position. Next question. Morrison sat back, looking satisfied. He'd accomplished what he'd come for. Planting doubt, making people wonder if Marcus's work was legitimate or if there were hidden complications that would surface later. The Q&A continued for another 20 minutes, but Marcus couldn't focus. His mind kept circling back to Morrison's questions, to the fact that Elena's firm had sent someone to this press conference specifically to undermine him. When it finally ended, he escaped to the green room and sat in a chair with his head in his hands. Hey, Chen's voice was gentle. You did great. Morrison just implied I might have stolen intellectual property from my own employer. Morrison is a lawyer doing what lawyers do, creating billable hours by inventing problems. Ignore him. Everyone in that room heard the same thing I did. And everyone in that room also heard you give a presentation that made complex technology accessible and compelling. They heard you talk about democratizing information instead of profit margins. They heard you be honest about uncertainty instead of bullshitting your way through. Chen sat down beside him. Morrison's questions are background noise. Your work is the signal. Patricia entered carrying her phone. We've got 4 companies interested in licensing discussions. Tom Winters just published his piece. It's positive, calls you refreshingly authentic, and says your algorithm could reshape the bandwidth landscape. And we're trending on 3 different tech news aggregators. What about Morrison's questions? What about them? He works for a corporate law firm. Of course he's going to raise legal concerns. It's literally his job. She showed Marcus her phone. Look at the actual coverage. The screen displayed Tom Winters' article. The headline read, Unknown engineer emerges with breakthrough compression technology and a refreshing dose of honesty. Marcus read the first few paragraphs. Winters had quoted him extensively, focusing on the democratization angle and his admission of not being good at public speaking. The piece painted him as a brilliant outsider bringing fresh perspective to an insular industry. This is good? Marcus asked. This is very good, Patricia confirmed. You came across as competent, humble, and genuine. In an industry full of overhyped bullshit, that's revolutionary. Marcus's phone buzzed. Multiple texts from colleagues, all variations of congratulations. One from Priya in data analytics. You killed it. Drinks later. Then one from a number he didn't recognize. Well done. You surprised me. E. Elena. Of course she'd watched. Of course she'd sent Morrison to try to undermine him. And now she was congratulating him like she hadn't just attempted to sabotage his moment. Marcus deleted the message without responding. The afternoon passed in a blur of networking and conversations Marcus barely remembered afterward. Industry executives wanted to discuss licensing terms. Journalists wanted follow-up quotes. Other engineers wanted to talk about technical implementation. By 5 p.m., Marcus was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. He found Chen near the registration tables. I need to leave. You should stay. There's a reception at 6. I can't. I need to pick up my daughter. Chen studied his face. You did good today, Marcus. Better than good. Don't let Morrison's bullshit take that away from you. I'm not. I just need to see my kid. The drive to Lily's school felt like decompression. Marcus rolled down the windows despite the cold air, letting the noise and pressure of the day blow away. He arrived 10 minutes before pickup ended and sat in the car, watching parents gather at the entrance. Lily emerged talking animatedly with Emma. When she spotted the car, her face lit up and she jogged over. How did it go? She asked, before she'd even closed the door. It went. Dad. Details. I need details. Marcus pulled out of the parking lot. I gave the presentation. People asked questions. Some of them were hostile. One of them was definitely sent by your mother's law firm to try to make me look bad. What? Lily's voice went sharp. That's messed up. That's corporate law. Did it work? Did you look bad? I don't think so. Your principal says you've been telling people I'm going to change the tech industry. Lily had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Mrs. Anderson talks too much. She says you need to learn how to be right without making other people feel stupid. I'm working on it. Work harder. They stopped for pizza on the way home, sitting in a booth at the back while Lily extracted every detail of the presentation she could. Marcus found himself describing it more honestly than he'd expected. The terror of walking on stage, the moment he'd gone off script, the way Morrison's questions had felt like an ambush. So Mom tried to sabotage you, Lily said, taking a bite of pepperoni. I don't know if it was her specifically or just her firm. Same thing. She works there. Lily's expression turned thoughtful. Why would she do that? Marcus had been asking himself the same question all afternoon. I don't know. I think I know. What's your theory? You're becoming someone important, someone visible, and she can't handle it because it means the story she told herself about you being ordinary wasn't true. Lily took a drink of her soda. She needs you to be small so she can stay big. Marcus looked at his 9-year-old daughter and wondered when she'd gotten so wise. That's pretty insightful. I'm gifted. Mrs. Anderson says so. She grinned. But seriously, Dad, you can't let her make you small again. You just did something amazing. Don't apologize for it. I'm not apologizing. You're thinking about it, though. I can see it on your face. She was right. Part of Marcus wanted to call Elena, explain that he hadn't been trying to show her up, that his success wasn't meant as a rebuke of her judgment. The impulse was old and familiar, the need to make himself smaller so other people could be comfortable. I'm working on it, he said, echoing Lily's earlier words. Work harder, she shot back, and they both laughed. At home, Marcus changed into sweatpants and made tea he didn't drink. His phone kept buzzing with messages, colleagues, old college friends who'd seen the coverage, people he hadn't spoken to in years suddenly interested in reconnecting. He ignored most of them. At 8:30, after Lily went to bed, he opened his laptop and searched for coverage of the summit. There were dozens of articles, most of them positive. A few raised questions about IP ownership, clearly picking up on Morrison's line of inquiry, but even those acknowledged the technical merit of the algorithm. One article included a photo of Marcus on stage, mid-presentation. He barely recognized himself, standing straight, shoulders back, eyes focused on the audience instead of the floor. He looked like someone who belonged there. His phone rang. Elena's number. Marcus stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello? Marcus? Hi. Her voice was careful, controlled. I watched the live stream. You were impressive. Thanks. I mean it. You really were. I didn't expect... She trailed off. Didn't expect what? I don't know. This. Any of this. A pause. Richard Morrison is a colleague. I didn't ask him to go to the press conference. But you knew he was going. Another pause. Longer this time. Yes. And you didn't tell him not to ask hostile questions. Marcus, he's a lawyer. It's his job to identify potential legal issues. It's his job to protect his clients. Who was he protecting? Elena didn't answer immediately. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost vulnerable. Can we talk? In person? Why? Because I owe you an explanation. And an apology. Several apologies, actually. Marcus thought about saying no. Thought about hanging up and never speaking to her again. But curiosity won out. When? Tomorrow? There's a coffee shop near your office, Marlowe's on 5th Street. 10 a.m.? I'll be there. Thank you, Marcus. The call ended. Marcus sat in the silence of his apartment, wondering what he'd just agreed to. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. Marcus made pancakes while Lily watched cartoons, trying not to think about the upcoming conversation. At 9:15, he told Lily he had to run an errand. You're meeting her, aren't you? Lily asked without looking away from the TV. How did you know? You have your nervous face on, the one you get when you're about to do something you think is a bad idea, but you're going to do it anyway. It's just coffee. That's what they all say. She finally looked at him. Be careful, okay? Don't let her make you feel bad about being successful. I won't. Promise? Promise. Marlowe's was a small coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner, the kind of place that served overpriced lattes to people who thought atmosphere justified the markup. Marcus arrived at 9:55 and found Elena already there, sitting at a table in the back with 2 cups of coffee. I got you a black coffee, she said when he sat down. You still drink it black, right? Yeah. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Elena looked different than she had at the reunion. Less polished, more tired. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater instead of the power suits Marcus had grown used to seeing in her social media posts. Thank you for coming, she said finally. You said you owed me an apology. Several. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I didn't ask Richard to ambush you at the press conference, but I didn't stop him either. I knew he was planning to raise questions about IP ownership, and I let it happen because... She stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Because part of me wanted you to fail. Marcus absorbed this. Why? Because if you succeeded, it meant I was wrong. About you. About us. About the story I've been telling myself for 7 years. Elena met his eyes. I convinced myself that leaving you was the right choice because you lacked ambition. Because you were content being ordinary. And if that was true, then I was justified in wanting more. And now? Now I'm sitting here realizing that you were never ordinary. I just needed to believe you were so I could feel better about leaving. She took a sip of coffee. You built something extraordinary, Marcus, and you did it while raising our daughter alone. I don't get to take credit for any of that, but I do get to apologize for trying to diminish it. Marcus didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to accept the apology and move on. Part of him wanted to throw the coffee in her face and walk out. You told everyone at the reunion that I was still doing the tech thing, he said quietly. Like it was a phase, like I was playing at a career instead of actually having one. I know. And then you sent your colleague to try to undermine my credibility in front of 300 people. I didn't send him, but yes, I let it happen. And I'm sorry. Well, why are you really here, Elena? What do you want? She looked down at her hands. I want to be able to tell Lily that her parents can be civil to each other. I want to stop feeling like a failure every time she talks about how great you are. And I want to apologize for 7 years of making you feel like you weren't enough. I was enough. I am enough. I just wasn't what you wanted. No. Elena's voice cracked slightly. You were exactly what I wanted. I was just too stupid and too ambitious and too obsessed with some imaginary future version of my life to see it. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of letting go. I don't know what to do with this, he admitted. You don't have to do anything with it. I'm not asking for us to be friends. I'm just asking for you to know that I see you now, the real you, and I'm sorry it took me so long. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee that had gone lukewarm. Outside, the city moved past the windows, people hurrying to wherever they needed to be, oblivious to the small moment of honesty happening in a corner of an overpriced coffee shop. Lily's smart, Elena said eventually. Really smart. Smarter than I was at her age. She gets that from you. She gets it from both of us. But she gets her kindness from you. And her ability to see through bullshit, that's all you. She told her teacher that another student's understanding of photosynthesis was fundamentally flawed and intellectually lazy. Elena laughed, a real laugh that sounded like the person Marcus had fallen in love with 17 years ago. Okay, maybe she gets the bluntness from me. Maybe. The conversation shifted to safer topics: Lily's school performance, her social struggles, the complicated navigation of co-parenting when one parent had been mostly absent. Elena admitted she'd been a terrible mother, prioritizing work over visits, sending late birthday cards, forgetting important events. I kept telling myself it was temporary, she said, that once I made partner, I'd have more time. But partnership just meant more responsibility, more cases, more reasons to put other things first. You could change that. I know. I'm trying. She finished her coffee. I want to be more present in her life, if that's okay with you. Marcus thought about it, about Lily's occasional questions about why her mother didn't visit more often, about the careful way his daughter talked about Elena like she was a person Lily had heard about but didn't really know. It's okay with me, he said, but you have to actually show up, not just promise to show up and then cancel, actually be there. I will, I promise. Elena, your promises don't mean much right now. She flinched but didn't argue. Then I'll earn back your trust, however long it takes. They left the coffee shop separately. Marcus drove home feeling lighter than he had in years. Not because Elena had apologized, though that mattered, but because he'd finally stopped needing her approval. She could see him or not see him, believe in him or not believe in him. It didn't change what he'd built. At home, Lily was still watching TV. She looked up when Marcus entered. How did it go? She apologized. For what specifically? For trying to make me smaller than I am, for sending her colleague to the press conference, for being a mostly absent parent. Marcus sat down beside her on the couch. She wants to be more present in your life. Lily considered this. Do you believe her? I don't know, but I think she means it right now. That's not the same thing as actually doing it. No, it's not. They watched TV in comfortable silence. During a commercial break, Lily leaned against Marcus's shoulder. I'm glad you went, she said quietly. Even if she messes up again, at least you gave her a chance. When did you get so mature? I've always been mature. You just notice when it's convenient. Marcus laughed and pulled her closer. Outside, the day moved forward. Somewhere across the city, Elena was probably driving back to her expensive apartment, thinking about all the ways she'd failed and all the ways she wanted to be better. Somewhere in tech offices and coffee shops and living rooms, people were talking about Marcus's presentation, his algorithm, his sudden emergence from obscurity. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, Marcus was sitting on his couch with his daughter, watching terrible cartoons existing in the small pocket of peace he'd built from nothing. His phone buzzed, a text from Patricia. 3 more licensing inquiries this morning. Monday's going to be crazy. Hope you're ready. Marcus looked at the message for a long moment, then put his phone face down on the coffee table. Everything okay? Lily asked. Everything's okay, Marcus said. Everything's actually pretty good. And for the first time in 7 years, he meant it. Sunday passed in a blur of normalcy. Grocery shopping, homework help. A movie that Lily picked and Marcus pretended to enjoy. But underneath the routine, Marcus felt something building. A sense of momentum, of standing at the edge of something larger than he'd anticipated. Monday morning arrived with an inbox full of meeting requests. Patricia wanted to discuss licensing strategy. Chen wanted to review implementation timelines. Diane had scheduled 3 more media interviews. The calendar filled up faster than Marcus could process. At his desk, surrounded by the familiar hum of the office, Marcus opened the first email and started working through the backlog. The fear was still there. It probably always would be. But it felt manageable now, like something he could carry instead of something that carried him. His phone rang. Lily's school. Mr. Hale? This is Principal Davidson. I wanted to let you know that Lily got into an altercation with another student during recess. Marcus's stomach dropped. Is she okay? She's fine, but we need you to come in. There's a situation we need to discuss. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, his mind racing through possibilities. Madison Pritchett, probably. Another argument about science or math or whatever 9-year-olds fought about these days. But when he arrived at the principal's office, it wasn't Madison sitting in the chair next to Lily. It was a boy Marcus didn't recognize, his face red and blotchy, his mother standing behind him with an expression that promised legal action. Mr. Hale, Principal Davidson said, thank you for coming. Please, sit down. Marcus sat. Lily wouldn't meet his eyes. There was an incident during recess, Davidson continued. Lily and Tyler here got into a physical altercation. Physical? Marcus looked at Lily. You hit someone? He started it, Lily said quietly. That's not true, Tyler's mother interjected. Your daughter attacked my son unprovoked. That's a lie, Lily's voice rose. He was making fun of Emma because her mom can't afford the class trip. I told him to stop and he shoved me, so I shoved him back. She pushed him into the wall, Tyler's mother said. He has a bruise. Principal Davidson held up a hand. Everyone, please. I've spoken to several witnesses. What appears to have happened is that Tyler made some unkind comments about another student's family finances. Lily confronted him verbally. Tyler then initiated physical contact by pushing Lily. Lily responded by pushing back, harder than intended, and Tyler fell against a wall. So she attacked him, Tyler's mother said. She defended herself, Marcus countered. Davidson's expression was carefully neutral. Regardless of who initiated contact, both students violated our zero-tolerance policy on physical altercations. They'll both be suspended for 3 days. That's not fair, Lily said. He was being cruel. Was I supposed to just let him? You were supposed to get a teacher, Davidson said gently. Violence is never the answer. Marcus felt something hot and angry rise in his chest. With all due respect, Principal Davidson, my daughter stood up for someone who was being bullied. Yes, she should have found a teacher, but punishing her the same way you're punishing the actual bully sends a pretty clear message about what you value. Mr. Hale, I understand your frustration, but the policy is clear. Then maybe the policy is wrong. The room fell silent. Tyler's mother looked satisfied. Davidson looked uncomfortable. Lily looked at Marcus with something like awe. The suspension stands, Davidson said finally. 3 days for both students. I'll send the official documentation home with them. In the car, Lily was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I'm sorry I disappointed you. Marcus pulled out of the parking lot. You didn't disappoint me. I got suspended. You stood up for your friend. That's not disappointing. The pushing part, that's something we need to talk about. But defending someone who's being bullied? I'm proud of you for that. Really? Really? Marcus glanced at her. But we need to find better ways to handle situations like this. Ways that don't get you suspended. I know. I just got so angry. He was saying Emma's family was poor and trashy and that she didn't belong at our school. Lily's voice cracked. It wasn't fair. No, it wasn't. But pushing him didn't make it fair. It just made you look as bad as him. They drove home in silence. Marcus called work and told them he needed the rest of the day off for a family emergency. Patricia didn't ask questions, just told him to take whatever time he needed. At home, Marcus made grilled cheese sandwiches while Lily sat at the table, still looking miserable. Am I in trouble? She asked. You're not in trouble, but we're going to talk about this. They ate lunch and talked about anger, about standing up for people without making things worse, about the difference between defending someone and escalating a situation. It was one of those parenting conversations that Marcus felt completely unqualified to have, but he fumbled through it anyway. Your principal was wrong, though, Lily said when they'd finished. About punishing me the same as Tyler. That's not justice. No, it's not. But sometimes the system doesn't work the way it should. That doesn't mean you get to ignore it. That's not fair either. Fairness and rules don't always align. That's something you're going to have to figure out how to navigate. Lily absorbed this. Is that what you did? With the press conference? You followed the rules even though Mom's colleague was trying to make you look bad? Something like that. But you wanted to push back. I could tell from how you described it. Marcus smiled. Yeah, I wanted to push back, but sometimes the better revenge is just being good at what you do. That's not as satisfying as pushing someone into a wall. No, but it lasts longer. They spent the afternoon watching movies and talking about everything and nothing. Marcus found himself grateful for the unexpected time with his daughter, even if the circumstances weren't ideal. That evening, after Lily went to bed, Marcus sat at his laptop and finally responded to the licensing inquiries that had been piling up. The work felt different now, not like something he was hiding behind, but something he was actively choosing. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Heard about Lily's suspension. Is she okay? Marcus stared at the message, surprised Elena knew already. Then he remembered that the principal probably contacted both parents. She's fine, he typed back. Stood up for a friend who was being bullied. Got physical when she shouldn't have. Sounds like someone I used to know. I never pushed anyone into a wall. You wanted to. I could always tell. Marcus couldn't argue with that. There had been plenty of times during their marriage when he'd wanted to push back against Elena's criticisms, her dismissive comments, her constant suggestions for how he could be better. He just never had. She gets her spine from you, Elena's next message read. That's not a bad thing. Marcus set down his phone and looked around his small apartment. It wasn't much: scratched floors, a kitchen that barely fit 2 people, furniture from thrift stores and Craigslist. But it was his. He'd built a life here that made sense, that had value, that mattered, and tomorrow he'd go back to work and continue building something even bigger. Not because he had something to prove to Elena or anyone else, but because he finally believed he was capable of it. His phone buzzed one more time, a text from Lily's room, even though she was supposed to be asleep. Thanks for not being mad at me. Marcus walked to her door and opened it quietly. She was sitting up in bed, her phone hidden under the covers. You're supposed to be sleeping, he said. I know. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For standing up for me, even when the principal was being stupid. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. You're my kid. Standing up for you is literally my job. I know, but you're really good at it, she paused. Better than Mom. Don't compare us. We're different people doing our best. Your best is better. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He kissed her forehead and stood to leave. Dad? Yeah? Are you going to keep being important, like after this week is over? I'm going to keep doing my job. Whether that makes me important is up to other people. I think you've always been important. Everyone else is just figuring it out now. Marcus closed her door and stood in the hallway, feeling his throat tighten. When had his daughter become the wisest person he knew? He returned to his laptop and worked until midnight, answering emails, reviewing contracts, preparing for meetings that would shape the next several months of his life. The fear was still there, but it was quieter now. Background noise instead of a constant scream. At 12:30, Marcus shut down his computer and sat in the dark apartment, listening to the city outside his windows. Somewhere out there, Elena was probably working late on a case, burning herself out in pursuit of a partnership she'd already achieved. Somewhere, Tyler's mother was probably complaining about unfair treatment. Somewhere, people who'd attended the Tech Innovation Summit were talking about his presentation, his algorithm, his unexpected emergence. But here, in this small apartment, with his sleeping daughter down the hall, Marcus was exactly where he needed to be. He went to bed and slept better than he had in weeks. Tuesday morning felt strange without the usual rush to get Lily to school. Marcus made breakfast while she sat at the kitchen table doing makeup work her teacher had emailed, both of them settling into the unexpected rhythm of suspension. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of Lily's pencil scratching against paper and the hum of traffic outside. This is kind of nice, Lily said, not looking up from her math worksheet. Not the being suspended part, but the being home together part. Oh, don't get used to it. I know, but still. She erased something and rewrote it. Are you going to work today? Marcus checked his phone. 17 new emails since he'd last looked an hour ago. I have to, at least for a few hours. Emma's mom said she could watch you, right? Yeah, she said I could help her bake cookies as punishment for getting suspended. That doesn't sound like much of a punishment. That's what I said. But apparently I have to listen to a lecture about conflict resolution while we bake. So it evens out. Marcus smiled despite himself. He'd called Emma's mother last night to explain the situation, expecting judgment, or at least awkwardness. Instead, she'd laughed and said Lily reminded her of herself at that age, then offered to watch her for the week. At 9 a.m., Marcus dropped Lily at Emma's house and drove to the office. The familiar parking garage felt different now, like he was arriving somewhere he actually belonged instead of somewhere he was just occupying space. The elevator ride to the 14th floor was packed with colleagues who nodded at him with something that looked almost like respect. Patricia was waiting at his desk when he arrived. Walk with me. They took the stairs up to the executive floor, a level Marcus had only visited a handful of times in 9 years. Patricia's office was all glass and clean lines with a view that looked out over the entire city. Sit, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. We need to talk about the next 6 months. Marcus sat. That sounds ominous. It's not ominous. It's reality. Patricia pulled up something on her computer and turned the screen so Marcus could see. We've had 12 licensing inquiries since Friday. 12. Do you know what that means? People are interested? People are desperate. Every major tech company is watching their competitors scramble to get ahead of this. The ones who don't secure licensing agreements are going to fall behind, and they know it. She leaned back in her chair. You created something that's going to define the next decade of data infrastructure. That comes with pressure. I'm starting to understand that. Good, because we need to move fast. Implementation meetings with the first tier of licensing partners start next week. You'll need to be in those meetings, explaining the technical specifications, answering integration questions. Can you handle that? Marcus thought about it. A week ago, the idea would have paralyzed him. Now it just felt like the next thing on a very long list. I can handle it, he said. You're going to need a team. I'm allocating budget for 3 senior engineers and 2 junior developers to start. You pick them. Build something that can scale. The implications hit Marcus all at once. He wasn't just implementing an algorithm anymore. He was building a division, leading people, making decisions that would affect careers and company direction. When do I start? You already started. First team meeting is Thursday. HR will send you a list of available candidates today. Review it. Pick your people. Get them on board. Patricia's expression softened slightly. I know this is a lot, but you're ready for it. How do you know? Because you keep showing up even when you're terrified. That's the only qualification that actually matters. Marcus left her office feeling both exhilarated and nauseated. He spent the next 3 hours reviewing candidate profiles, identifying engineers whose work he'd admired from a distance. By noon, he'd sent interview requests to 6 people and felt like he'd run a marathon. His phone rang. An unknown number with a New York area code. Marcus Hale. Mr. Hale, this is Jennifer Santos from the Wall Street Journal. Do you have a moment? Marcus almost said no. Then he remembered Diane's advice about media engagement being crucial during a product launch. I have a few minutes. Great. I'm writing a piece about the compression algorithm and its potential market impact. I was hoping you could give me some insight into the development process. They talked for 20 minutes. Santos asked smart questions about the technical challenges, the breakthrough moments, the commercial applications. Marcus found himself relaxing into the conversation, explaining concepts the way he would to Lily or Chen. One last question, Santos said. There's been some speculation about intellectual property ownership. Richard Morrison from Morrison and Wesley raised concerns at the press conference. Can you address that? Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Axiom's legal team has thoroughly reviewed the development timeline. There are no IP ownership issues. Morrison was creating problems where none exist. He suggested you develop the algorithm using proprietary knowledge gained through your employment. I developed it on my own time, using publicly available research and my own expertise. If Morrison has specific legal concerns, he can contact our legal department, but I'm not going to dignify speculation with detailed responses. There was a pause. That's a strong statement. It's an accurate statement. Fair enough. Thank you for your time, Mr. Hale. The call ended. Marcus sat staring at his phone, adrenaline coursing through him. A week ago, he would have stammered through Morrison's accusations, apologized for things he hadn't done, tried to make everyone comfortable with his existence. Now he just felt angry that anyone would question his integrity. His desk phone rang, Chen's extension. "Did you just tell the Wall Street Journal that Morrison can go to hell?" Chen asked, sounding delighted. "I said he could contact our legal department." "Same thing, different words. I'm proud of you." "He was implying I stole from my own company." "He was doing his job, being an obstructive lawyer. You did your job, shutting him down. This is how it works." Chen paused. "You free for lunch? There's someone I want you to meet." They met at a restaurant 3 blocks from the office, the kind of place where tech executives conducted business over overpriced salads. Chen was waiting at a table with another man Marcus didn't recognize, older, maybe 60, with gray hair and the kind of face that suggested he didn't smile often. "Marcus, this is Robert Chen, my father." Marcus shook the offered hand, surprised by the grip strength. "David's told me about you," Robert said as they sat. "Said you're the most talented engineer he's worked with in 20 years. He's being generous. He's being accurate. I taught him to recognize talent. If he says you're exceptional, you are." Marcus glanced at Chen, who was studying the menu with exaggerated interest. "My father started 3 successful tech companies," Chen explained. "Sold 2 of them, still runs the 3rd. He has opinions about everything. And one of my opinions," Robert said, "is that you're about to get eaten alive if you're not careful." "Dad," Chen said warningly, "let me finish." Robert leaned forward. "You created something valuable. That makes you a target. Every company that doesn't get a licensing agreement is going to try to replicate your work or find ways to invalidate your patents. Lawyers like Morrison's are going to keep asking questions, keep planting doubts, because that's how you devalue intellectual property." Marcus absorbed this. "What am I supposed to do about it?" "Stop being defensive. Morrison's questions at the press conference? You should have shut him down immediately instead of letting Patricia do it. The Wall Street Journal call? Better, but still reactive. You need to control the narrative before someone else does." "I don't know how to do that." "Learn. Fast." Robert flagged down a waiter and ordered without looking at the menu. "David showed me your presentation. You were honest, genuine, compelling. That's your strength. Use it. Do more interviews. Write about your development process. Make yourself so visible and so credible that people like Morrison look foolish for questioning you." "That sounds exhausting." "It is, but it's necessary." Robert's expression softened slightly. "You remind me of David when he started out. Brilliant, but terrified of being seen. He got over it. So will you." They ordered food and spent the next hour talking about strategy, media management, and the brutal realities of tech industry politics. Robert had opinions about everything: which journalists to trust, which companies would try to steal the technology, which executives would attempt to poach Marcus away from Axiom. "Don't leave," Robert said firmly. "Patricia's smart, and she's giving you room to build something real. Most companies would stick you in a corner and take credit for your work. Axiom's giving you ownership. That's rare." By the time lunch ended, Marcus's head was spinning. Robert shook his hand again at the restaurant entrance. "You've got something special, Marcus. Don't waste it by being too scared to defend it." Chen and Marcus walked back to the office together. "Sorry about my father. He's intense." "He's right, though. Usually is. Drives me crazy." Chen stopped at the building entrance. "He likes you, by the way. He doesn't give strategic advice to people he doesn't respect." Marcus didn't know what to do with that information, so he just nodded. The afternoon brought the candidate list from HR, 23 engineers with varying levels of experience and expertise. Marcus reviewed each profile carefully, looking for people who could handle complex technical challenges and work well under pressure. By 4 p.m., he'd narrowed it to 8 candidates and scheduled interviews for the rest of the week. He picked up Lily at 5:30. She was covered in flour and smiling. "We made chocolate chip cookies," she announced, holding up a container. "And I learned that pushing people is bad, even when they deserve it." Profound lesson. "Emma's mom is really good at lectures. She made me feel guilty without actually yelling. It's impressive." At home, they ate the cookies for dinner despite Marcus knowing he should probably make them eat actual food. Lily talked about the conflict resolution lecture, the baking process, and her theory that Madison Pritchett was mean because her parents were getting divorced. How do you know that? Marcus asked. She told Emma, and Emma told me. Apparently Madison's dad is moving out next month. Marcus felt a pang of sympathy. He remembered what it felt like when his marriage ended, the way the world tilted and refused to right itself. Maybe you could be nicer to her, he suggested. I'm not mean to her, I just correct her when she's wrong. There's a difference between being correct and being kind. You sound like Emma's mom. She sounds smart. That night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus sat at his laptop and did something he'd been avoiding. He Googled himself. The search results had multiplied since Friday. Articles about the summit, analysis of the compression algorithm, speculation about market impact. One piece from a tech blog called him the accidental revolutionary, which Marcus found both flattering and vaguely insulting. Further down the results, he found something that made his stomach drop. An article from a legal technology blog titled IP Ownership Questions Cloud Breakthrough Algorithm. The piece heavily quoted Richard Morrison and raised questions about whether Marcus had violated his employment contract by developing the technology independently. Marcus read it twice, his anger building. Every claim was couched in careful language. Sources suggest, questions remain, potential concerns, but the implication was clear. They were trying to paint him as someone who'd stolen from his employer. He called Chen. Have you seen the Legal Tech Review article? Marcus asked without preamble. I've seen it. So has our legal department. They're drafting a response. This is Morrison again, isn't it? He's feeding them information. Probably. It's a standard tactic. Plant doubt, watch it spread. Use the coverage to pressure settlement negotiations. Settlement for what? I didn't do anything wrong. Of course you didn't. But defending yourself is expensive and time-consuming. Some companies would rather pay to make the questions go away than fight a protracted legal battle. Chen's voice was calm but firm. We're not some companies. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. How? By being completely transparent. Tomorrow, we're releasing your full development timeline, showing exactly when you worked on the algorithm, what resources you used, how it fits within your employment contract. We're making it impossible for Morrison to claim there's any ambiguity. Marcus felt some of the tension ease. What do I need to do? Nothing. Let legal handle it. You focus on building your team and implementing the technology. That's how you win this, by being so good at your job that Morrison's questions become irrelevant. After the call ended, Marcus sat in the dark apartment and tried not to think about Elena. About whether she knew Morrison was doing this, whether she'd encouraged it, whether part of her still needed Marcus to fail so she could justify leaving him. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop responding to media inquiries. You're making this worse. R.M. Richard Morrison. Somehow he'd gotten Marcus's personal number. Marcus stared at the message, rage building in his chest. Then he did something he would have never done a week ago. He called the number back. Morrison answered on the second ring. Mr. Hale. Stop planning stories about me. I'm not planning stories. I'm raising legitimate legal questions. Bullshit. You're creating doubt where none exists because Elena asked you to. There was a pause. Elena didn't ask me to do anything. But she knows you're doing it. Another pause. Longer this time. She's conflicted about your success. That's not the same as asking me to sabotage you. Then why are you doing it? Because it's my job to identify potential legal vulnerabilities in high-value IP cases. If your algorithm is as valuable as everyone says, there will be challenges. I'm just getting ahead of them. By destroying my credibility? By stress testing it. If you can't handle questions about development methodology now, you won't survive the actual legal challenges when they come. Morrison's voice shifted slightly. For what it's worth, I think your work is legitimate. But the court of public opinion doesn't care about what I think. They care about doubt. And right now, I'm teaching you how to eliminate it. Marcus didn't know whether to believe him. By attacking me in the press? By forcing you to defend yourself publicly, to be clear and transparent and unambiguous about every aspect of your development process. When the real challenges come, and they will, you'll already have a documented history of transparency. That's a twisted way to help someone. Welcome to corporate law. Nothing's straightforward, and nobody's motivations are pure. Morrison paused. Elena didn't ask me to do this, but she's watching carefully. Part of her wants you to succeed. Part of her is terrified of what your success means about the choices she made. That's not my problem. No, it's not, but it's context you should have. Morrison's tone turned businesslike again. I'll stop feeding information to the legal blogs. Your company's response tomorrow will be sufficient to address the questions I raised. But understand something, Mr. Hale. This is just the beginning. Your algorithm is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Every company that doesn't get what they want is going to come after you. Lawyer up and learn to fight back. The call ended before Marcus could respond. He sat holding his phone, trying to process the conversation. Morrison had essentially admitted to orchestrating the negative coverage while claiming it was somehow for Marcus's benefit. It was manipulation disguised as mentorship, and Marcus couldn't tell where the lie ended and the truth began. He called Elena. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice thick with sleep. Marcus? It's 11:30. Did you know Morrison was planting stories about me? Silence. Then, yes. And you didn't stop him? I told him it was a bad idea. He said it was necessary. She sighed. He's not wrong, Marcus. If your algorithm is as valuable as people say, you're going to face challenges. Better to learn how to handle them now than be blindsided later. That's not his decision to make, or yours. You're right. I'm sorry. Her voice was quiet. I keep doing this, trying to control situations that aren't mine to control, trying to protect you from things you don't need protection from. I don't need your protection. I need you to stop interfering in my life. Okay? The simplicity of the response threw him. Okay? Okay. I'll talk to Morrison. Tell him to back off. This is your career, your success. I don't get to manage it. She paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I know that doesn't mean much coming from me right now, but it's true. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. I need to go. Marcus, wait. Can I ask you something? What? Do you hate me? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about it honestly. Did he hate Elena? For leaving him? For spending 7 years making him feel inadequate? For trying to undermine his success even now? No, he said finally. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you either, and I don't want you in my life beyond what's necessary for Lily. That's fair. Her voice cracked slightly. That's more than fair. She hung up. Marcus sat in the darkness and felt something loosen in his chest. Setting boundaries with Elena felt like cutting an anchor line, painful but necessary. Wednesday morning brought Lily's second day of suspension and Marcus's first round of team interviews. He dropped Lily at Emma's house and arrived at the office by 8 a.m. The first candidate was waiting in the conference room. Priya from Data Analytics, someone Marcus had worked with on several projects. You're interviewing me? She asked when he walked in. I'm building a team. You're one of the best data engineers we have. I've never worked directly on compression algorithms. Neither had I until 2 years ago. I need people who can think creatively about complex problems. You do that. The interview lasted 45 minutes. By the end, Marcus had offered her the position, and she'd accepted. The next 3 interviews went similarly well. By noon, Marcus had assembled half his team. People he trusted, people who challenged him, people who could build something that would last. At lunch, he sat in his car and ate a sandwich while reviewing the legal department's press release. It was thorough and unambiguous, laying out every detail of the algorithm's development timeline. It made Morrison's questions look exactly like what they were: manufactured controversy designed to create leverage. His phone rang. Tom Winters from TechCrunch. I just saw Axiom's press release, Winters said. Want to give me a quote? About what specifically? About the IP ownership questions, Morrison's claims, the timeline documentation. Marcus thought about Robert Chen's advice. Control the narrative. Richard Morrison raised questions because that's what lawyers do, Marcus said carefully. They identify potential vulnerabilities and test them. Axiom's legal department has provided comprehensive documentation proving that I followed all protocols and contractual obligations. The questions have been answered. Time to move on. That's very diplomatic. I'm learning. One more question, off the record. How does it feel to have your ex-wife's colleague trying to undermine you publicly? Marcus felt his chest tighten. How did you know Elena and I were married? I'm a journalist. I do research. Winters paused. You don't have to answer, but it's a hell of a subplot. It's irrelevant. This is about the work, not my personal history. Fair enough. Thanks for the quote. The call ended. Marcus sat in his car, staring at the steering wheel. Of course, journalists would dig into his background. Of course, they'd find the connection between him and Elena, between Elena and Morrison. The story was too good to ignore. Brilliant engineer creates breakthrough technology. Ex-wife's law firm tries to tear him down. He called Diane. We need to talk about messaging, he said when she answered. They met in her office at 2 p.m. Diane listened while Marcus explained the Elena Morrison connection, the potential for the story to become about his personal life instead of his work. This is going to come out, Diane said finally. The question is whether we get ahead of it or let someone else break it. What do you recommend? Transparency. We acknowledge the connection, emphasize that Morrison's questions were professionally motivated regardless of personal history, and pivot back to the technology. She made notes on her tablet. I'll draft a statement we can use if anyone asks directly. But Marcus? Don't volunteer this information. Only confirm if pressed. Won't that make it look like I'm hiding something? No. It makes it look like you're focused on what matters. Your personal life isn't relevant to your professional achievements. We only discuss it if forced. Marcus left her office feeling slightly better, but still uneasy. The walls between his past and his present were dissolving faster than he could rebuild them. He picked up Lily at 5 p.m. She was reading on Emma's couch, looking content. How was your day? She asked on the drive home. Complicated. Hired 4 people, dealt with more legal drama, learned that journalists are digging into my personal life. Are they going to find out about Mom? They already found out. The question is whether they write about it. Lily considered this. Would that be bad? I don't know. Maybe. It makes the story about our divorce instead of about the work. But the divorce is part of the story, isn't it? You built the algorithm after she left. You were trying to prove something. Marcus glanced at her, surprised. How did you know that? Because I know you. You don't do anything without a reason. And the reason you worked on that algorithm for 2 years wasn't just because you saw a technical problem. It was because you needed to prove you weren't the failure she thought you were. The accuracy of the observation hit Marcus like a physical blow. When did you figure that out? A while ago? I'm smart, remember? She paused. Is it bad that your motivation was proving her wrong? I don't know. Does it matter what the motivation was if the result is good? I think so. Because if you only did it to prove something to her, then she still has power over you. But if you did it because you actually wanted to build something important, then you did it for yourself. Marcus pulled into their apartment complex and parked. You're 9. You shouldn't be this wise. I'll be 10 next month. And somebody has to be wise in this family. They went inside and made dinner together. Spaghetti with sauce from a jar, garlic bread that Lily insisted on making from scratch, even though it took forever. While they ate, Lily talked about a book she was reading, something about a girl who discovered she had magic powers and had to save her town from dark forces. Do you think magic is real? She asked between bites of pasta. No. Not even a little? Not even a little. Why? Because sometimes things happen that feel like magic. Like you creating something amazing, or me pushing Tyler and him falling exactly the right way so he didn't actually get hurt. It feels like something bigger than just coincidence. Marcus set down his fork. Life isn't magic, sweetheart. It's just a series of choices and consequences. Sometimes the consequences are good, sometimes they're not. But there's no mysterious force making things happen. That's depressing. That's reality. Lily twirled spaghetti around her fork. I think I prefer the magic version. Most people do, but understanding reality is more useful than believing in magic. You sound like a fortune cookie. Marcus laughed despite himself. Eat your dinner. That night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus opened his laptop and found an email from Patricia with the subject line board meeting next week. The message was brief. The board wanted a presentation on the compression algorithm, implementation timeline, and revenue projections. Marcus had 4 days to prepare. He spent the next 3 hours building a presentation, drawing on everything Diane and Michelle had taught him about public speaking. By midnight, he had a rough draft that was probably terrible but was better than nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from Chen. "Stop working. Sleep is important." "How did you know I was working?" "Because I know you. Also, I can see you're active in the company Slack. Go to bed." Marcus closed his laptop and stared at the ceiling. In 4 days, he'd present to the board. In less than a month, the first licensing agreements would go into effect. In 6 months, his algorithm would be integrated into systems used by millions of people. The weight of it should have been crushing. Instead, it felt almost manageable. Not easy, but possible. Thursday brought the final round of team interviews and Lily's last day of suspension. Marcus hired 2 more engineers, both brilliant and both willing to take a chance on a newly formed division led by someone with no management experience. "Why did you say yes?" Marcus asked the last candidate, a junior developer fresh out of MIT. "Because you built something nobody else could build," she said simply. "I want to learn from that." At the end of the day, Marcus had a complete team, 7 people who would help him turn an algorithm into a functional system that could scale globally. The first team meeting was scheduled for Monday. He picked up Lily at Emma's house for the last time that week. She was quiet on the drive home, staring out the window at the city passing by. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "I've been thinking about what you said, about life being choices and consequences instead of magic." And I think you're wrong. Not completely wrong, but partially wrong." "How so?" "Because sometimes the consequences are so much better than the choice deserved. Like you creating that algorithm. You made a choice to work on it, but the consequence was way bigger than you expected. That extra part, the part that's more than you planned for, that's magic." Marcus thought about it, about how a side project had turned into something that could change an entire industry, about how stepping on stage terrified had somehow led to credibility and respect, about how being honest when he could have been polished had resonated more than any script. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. "I usually am. You should listen to me more often." They spent the evening in comfortable routine. Dinner, homework, a movie that Lily picked and Marcus actually paid attention to this time. At bedtime, Lily hugged him hard. "I'm glad you're becoming important," she said into his shoulder. "But I'm more glad you're still you." Marcus held her tight, feeling his throat constrict. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." "Bye." After she went to sleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and reviewed the board presentation one more time. It was good, not perfect, but honest and clear and comprehensive. It would have to be enough. His phone buzzed, an email from the Wall Street Journal with the subject line profile piece. Jennifer Santos wanted to write an in-depth feature about Marcus, his background, his development process, his sudden emergence as a key player in the tech industry. Marcus stared at the email for a long time. A profile piece meant opening up his life to scrutiny, meant talking about Elena, about being a single father, about all the ways he'd been invisible for years before suddenly becoming visible. He could say no, decline the interview and stay focused on the work. Or he could say yes, control his own narrative instead of letting others write it for him. Marcus thought about Robert Chen's advice, about Lily's wisdom, about the fact that he'd spent 7 years being too scared to be seen. He typed a response. "I'm interested. Let's talk about parameters." Then he closed his laptop and went to bed, feeling like he'd just made a choice whose consequences he couldn't predict. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that was the point. Friday morning, Lily returned to school with a packet of makeup work and a better understanding of conflict resolution. Marcus dropped her off and headed to the office, where his inbox had exploded overnight with questions about the board presentation, licensing negotiations, and implementation timelines. At 10 a.m., he met with his new team for the first time. 7 engineers sitting around a conference table, looking at him expectantly. "I'm not good at inspirational speeches," Marcus said, "so I'm not going to try. What I will tell you is this. We're building something that matters, something that will make information more accessible to people who can't afford it right now. That's not hyperbole. That's the actual goal." He pulled up the technical specifications on the screen. "This is what we're working with. It's complicated, it's going to be hard, and there will be days when nothing works the way it should. But if we can pull this off, we'll have built something that lasts. The meeting ran for 2 hours. They discussed architecture, implementation challenges, integration timelines. Marcus found himself energized by the conversation, by working with people who understood the technical complexity and weren't afraid of it. At noon, Patricia stopped by his desk. Board presentation is Tuesday at 2 p.m. You ready? No. Good answer. The people who say they're ready are usually lying. She handed him a folder. Updated revenue projections. They're aggressive, but achievable. Use them. Marcus spent the weekend refining the presentation, practicing delivery, and trying not to think about how much was riding on Tuesday's meeting. Lily helped by sitting on the couch and offering commentary like, "You said 17 times in that section," and "You look scared. Stop looking scared." Sunday night, Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through everything that could go wrong. The board could reject the projections. They could decide the implementation timeline was too aggressive. They could lose confidence in his ability to lead the division. Or they could approve everything, and Marcus would spend the next year building something that could define his entire career. Both options were terrifying. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Lily told me about the board presentation. Good luck." Marcus stared at the message, unsure how to feel about Elena knowing details of his life through their daughter. He typed back a simple "thanks" and put the phone away. Monday passed in preparation meetings and final reviews. By the time Marcus left the office at 7 p.m., he had rehearsed the presentation so many times the words had lost all meaning. At home, Lily was waiting with a folder. "I made you something." Inside was a hand-drawn chart showing the compression algorithm's efficiency compared to current standards. It was crude but accurate, with notes in Lily's careful handwriting explaining each data point. "I figured you could use it in your presentation," she said, "to show that even a fourth grader can understand why your algorithm is better." Marcus felt his eyes sting. "This is perfect." "I know. I'm gifted." She grinned at him. "You're going to be great tomorrow, Dad. Just remember what I told you." "What did you tell me?" "That consequences can be magic. You made a choice to build something important. Tomorrow you get to see the magic part." Marcus hugged her tight, wondering how he'd managed to raise someone so much wiser than himself. Tuesday morning arrived too fast. Marcus dropped Lily at school, drove to the office, and sat in his car for 10 minutes trying to calm his racing heart. At 1:45, he walked into the executive conference room where the board was already gathering. Patricia caught his eye and nodded. Chen gave him a thumbs up from across the room. Diane mouthed, "You've got this," from her seat near the door. At 2 p.m. exactly, the board chairman called the meeting to order. "First item on the agenda," he said, looking directly at Marcus. "Presentation on the compression algorithm implementation and revenue projections. Mr. Hale, the floor is yours." Marcus stood, walked to the front of the room, and began to speak. And for the first time in his life, he didn't apologize for taking up space. The presentation lasted 37 minutes. Marcus spoke without notes, explaining the algorithm's technical foundation, the implementation timeline, and revenue projections that seemed ambitious even to him. The board members asked sharp questions about scalability, competitive threats, and long-term viability. Marcus answered each one honestly, admitting uncertainty where it existed, defending his projections where he was confident. When he finished, the room fell silent. The chairman leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. "Mr. Hale, this is the most thorough technical presentation I've seen in 15 years on this board," he said finally. "Your projections are aggressive, your timeline is ambitious, and I believe every word of it." The board voted unanimously to approve the full implementation plan, including budget allocation for expansion beyond the initial team. Patricia walked Marcus out of the conference room afterward, her hand on his shoulder. "You just secured funding for a division that could become bigger than the rest of the company," she said quietly. "How does that feel?" Marcus thought about it. "Terrifying, but good terrifying. Best kind." She squeezed his shoulder. "Go home. Celebrate with your daughter. Tomorrow, the real work starts." Marcus picked up Lily early from after-school care, something he almost never did. She looked up in surprise when he appeared in the doorway. "Did something happen?" she asked, immediately worried. "Board approved everything. Full funding, full support." Lily's face split into a grin. I told you, magic consequences. They went out for dinner at a restaurant that was too expensive for a Tuesday night, ordered dessert before the main course arrived, and talked about everything except work. Lily told him about a science project, about Madison Pritchett actually apologizing for being mean, about Emma's theory that their teacher was secretly a superhero based on circumstantial evidence that made no sense. "You're happy," Lily observed over ice cream. "I am." Like, actually happy, not pretending happy. Marcus considered this. "Yeah, actually happy." "Good, you deserve it." She took a bite of her sundae. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you still love Mom?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He set down his spoon and looked at his daughter, this wise, perceptive person who saw through everything. "No," he said honestly. "I don't think I do anymore. Maybe I haven't for a long time." "But you used to?" "I used to, very much." "What changed?" Marcus thought about how to explain it. "I stopped needing her to see me as valuable. Once I could see it myself, her opinion didn't matter the same way." Lily nodded slowly. "That makes sense. Emma's mom says the best relationships are the ones where you don't need the other person to complete you. You just choose them because you want them there." Emma's mom is very wise. "She is, but so are you." Lily smiled at him. "You chose to be my dad every single day, even when it was hard. That matters more than anything Mom did or didn't do." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You're going to make me cry in public." "Wouldn't be the first time." "You cried at that dog movie last month." "That dog died saving the kid. It was emotional." "It was a cartoon, Dad." They finished dessert and drove home through evening traffic, the city lights blurring past. At home, Lily went straight to her room to finish homework while Marcus sat on the couch and finally let himself process the day. The board approval meant everything was real now. The division, the team, the responsibility of building something that would affect millions of people. His phone rang. Elena's number. "Congratulations," she said when he answered. "Lily texted me about the board meeting." "Thanks." "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Are we ever going to be okay? Not together, just okay with each other?" Marcus looked around his small apartment at the life he'd built from the wreckage of their marriage. "I think we already are. We're just not what you want us to be." "What do you mean?" "You want absolution. You want me to tell you that leaving was the right choice, and that we're both better off, and that there are no hard feelings." He paused. "I can't give you that. But I can tell you that I don't hate you, and I want you to be a good mother to Lily, and that's probably the best we're going to get." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "That's fair. More than fair." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm trying, Marcus, to be better, to be present." "I know. Keep trying." After they hung up, Marcus sat in the quiet apartment and felt something like peace settle over him. Elena would always be Lily's mother, always be part of his history. But she wasn't the center of his story anymore. She was just a chapter he'd moved past. The next 6 months passed in a blur of implementation meetings, licensing negotiations, and technical challenges that pushed Marcus's team to their limits. The algorithm proved even more effective at scale than initial tests had suggested. The first major client went live in March, reporting bandwidth cost reductions of 47%. By June, 15 companies had signed licensing agreements, and the waiting list was growing. Marcus learned to navigate board meetings, media interviews, and industry conferences without the paralyzing terror that had once defined him. He wasn't smooth or polished, but he was authentic and competent, and people responded to that. Lily turned 10 in April. Elena showed up to the birthday party, actually showed up on time, with a thoughtful gift and genuine engagement with her daughter. It was awkward and imperfect, and better than it had been. In July, the Wall Street Journal profile ran. Jennifer Santos had spent 3 months reporting, interviewing everyone from Marcus's college professors to his daughter to Richard Morrison. The piece was fair and thorough, acknowledging both Marcus's technical brilliance and his very human struggle with visibility and confidence. The headline read, "The Reluctant Revolutionary: How a Single Father Changed Data Compression While Learning to Believe in Himself." Marcus read it once and didn't look at it again. The story was accurate, but it felt like it belonged to someone else, a character in a narrative he'd already moved beyond. By September, the division had grown to 23 employees. The algorithm had been integrated into systems serving over 200 million users globally. Revenue projections for the year were exceeding even the aggressive numbers Marcus had presented to the board. On a Thursday afternoon in late September, Marcus left work early to attend Lily's school science fair. She'd built a working model demonstrating compression algorithms using water and different-sized containers. It was brilliant and creative and completely her. "You're basically stealing my work," Marcus said, examining the display. "I'm building on your work. There's a difference." Lily adjusted one of her containers. "Also, I cited you in my bibliography, so it's legal." "Very thoughtful." "I learned from the best." Lily won second place. First place went to a project about renewable energy that involved actual solar panels and was objectively more impressive. Lily didn't seem bothered. "Second place is good," she said as they walked to the car. "Leaves room for improvement next year." "You sound like an engineer." "I am an engineer, just a really short one who can't legally drive yet." That night, Marcus made dinner while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. It was ordinary and comfortable and exactly what Marcus had been building toward for the past year, a life that was stable and full and his. His phone buzzed, a text from Chen. "Drinks tomorrow to celebrate hitting revenue targets. Patricia's buying. I'll be there," Marcus typed back. Another text came in, this one from an unknown number. "Mr. Hale, this is the Harvard Innovation Lab. We'd like to discuss having you speak at our annual conference. Are you available?" Marcus stared at the message. Harvard. They wanted him to speak at Harvard. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, looking up from her math homework. "Harvard wants me to speak at a conference." "That's amazing. Why do you look worried?" "Because a year ago I could barely speak in front of 300 people at the Tech Summit. Now they want me at Harvard." Lily set down her pencil. "Dad, you've given like 20 presentations since then. You're good at this now. Stop being surprised when people notice." Marcus typed back a response accepting the invitation, feeling equal parts pride and disbelief. The Harvard conference was in November. Marcus flew to Boston on a Friday morning, delivered his presentation to a packed auditorium, and fielded questions from students and professors who treated his work with a reverence that made him uncomfortable. Afterward, a young computer science student approached him. "Mr. Hale, I just wanted to say thank you. Your algorithm made it possible for my family back in the Philippines to video call without buffering. My grandmother got to see my graduation because of your work." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. This was why he'd built it, not for recognition or revenue, but for moments like this, for grandmothers watching graduations, for families staying connected across impossible distances. "Thank you for telling me that," Marcus said quietly. He flew home Sunday evening and went straight from the airport to pick up Lily from Elena's apartment. It was Elena's weekend with their daughter, part of a custody arrangement they'd finally formalized over the summer. Elena answered the door looking tired but genuine. "She's almost ready. Come in." Marcus stepped inside, taking in the space Elena had made for their daughter. A bedroom filled with books and art supplies, evidence of actual effort and presence. "She had a good weekend?" Marcus asked. "We did the museum, made cookies that turned out terrible, and had a long talk about boys that made me feel very old." Elena smiled. "It was good, really good." Lily emerged from her room with her backpack, hugged Elena goodbye with actual warmth, and followed Marcus to the car. "How was Boston?" she asked as they drove home. "Good. Strange. A student told me his grandmother got to watch his graduation because of the algorithm." "See? Magic consequences." Lily grinned at him. "You made a choice. The universe made it matter more than you expected." "You're very wise for 10. I'll be very wise for 11 soon. Don't forget my birthday's in April." "That's 6 months away." "I'm giving you advance notice. I want a good present this year." Marcus laughed, and they drove home through the November darkness, the city lights guiding them back to the small apartment that had become something more than just a place to live. It had become home in the truest sense, not because it was impressive or large, but because it was theirs. That night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus stood in his living room and looked around at the life he'd built. It wasn't perfect. The apartment was still too small, the furniture still secondhand, the future still uncertain in 1,000 ways. But it was real and solid, and his. His phone buzzed one last time. A message from Patricia. Board wants to discuss VP track for you in the new year. You interested? Marcus looked at the message for a long time. Vice President, a title that would have terrified him a year ago. Now it just felt like the next step in a journey he'd already committed to. Very interested, he typed back. He went to bed and slept soundly, dreaming of nothing in particular. In the morning, he'd wake up and make breakfast for his daughter. He'd drop her at school and go to work and lead his team and continue building something that mattered. But right now, in this moment, Marcus Hale was exactly where he needed to be. Not invisible, not overlooked, not apologizing for existing, just present, capable, and finally enough. The story of the man who wasn't good enough for Elena Cross had ended long ago. The story of Marcus Hale, the engineer who changed an industry while learning to see his own worth, was still being written. And this time, he was holding the pen.